Take their seats, please. James, you're going to miss this. You're going to miss this. Kia ora. Could we start with a karakia timatanga from Councillor Davidson, please?
Whakatakate hau ki te uru, whakatakate hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki o tā, ki mā taratara ki tai. He hi aki ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hohu, ti he Motorway.
Kia ora. Thank you very much. Apologies. I have an apology received from Councillor Chu for possible early departure, I guess, depending on the time of the meeting finishing. So would someone like to move that? Councillor Major for lateness. Oh, Councillor Major for lateness. Sam McDonald, seconded Pauline Cotter. Put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Declarations of interest. I've received declarations for item 13 from Councillor Goff. Hearings panel report to the Council on the City Mall and Oxford Terrace access changes, and of course all of the CCHL directors for the draft statement of intent. That's myself, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Goff and Councillor Templeton for item 20. So, and I'm also anticipating that we will deal with said item immediately following morning tea at 11:15. Thank you. So now we move to public participation in the public forum. Could I invite Stephen McPake to come and talk to us about a walk for help? Thank you, Stephen.
Good morning, councillors. Mayor. I'm actually quite nervous today. It's been something I've been working on for a
You
while.
could turn your sound up. Oh no, it's done. It's done. Taken
Sweet.
care of.
So during level 4 lockdown, I was contacted by a guy that I'll call Bob. He was talking about being abused by his partner, how she would come along and beat him up. I didn't realise how serious it was until I had a video conference with him. She comes along, smacks him. He ended up in hospital with serious injuries, and then afterwards he spent a night in the police cells. Because at the moment, police think males who do domestic violence are guilty until proven innocent. And that breaks my heart. It really does. And I'm hearing more and more of these sorts of stories constantly by males who have been approaching me. I've been working with the Canterbury Men's Centre and other organisations like Mitre 10 Mega Ferrymead to organise this walk. It's to raise awareness that males are survivors of domestic abuse, relationship abuse and intimate relationship abuse. But don't get me wrong, I will not take anything away from female survivors. In fact, they're more than welcome to join me on my walk. My walk will be held on the 16th of June from 7 a.m. around Hagley Park South, starting from the netball courts entrance going anti-clockwise. And I'm planning to do at least 26 laps, which is approximately 3.6 k's per lap. I've also started up a Give a Little page. The link is located on my events page on Facebook. All money will be going towards Canterbury Men's Centre for free counselling for male survivors. As you can see, my lovely little logo up there, Walk for Help. The purple ribbon symbolises survivors of victim, relationship abuse and intimate relationship abuse. It is designed as a walker to show that you are walking away from a bad relationship and walking into a new life. Bob only contacted me last week. He's now in a happy relationship after months of counselling. He is now looking at proposing to his new partner. And for that, I wish him all the best, and I know you're watching, Bob. And yes, I have changed your name. Once again, I'd like to thank Mighty 10 Mega Ferrymead and the Canterbury Men's Centre for my lovely logo and all the support they've given me. And I'd like to invite you all, including the community boards, to come and join me on 16th of June. Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you. We've got a minute if people would like to ask a question. Aaron.
Yeah, Stephen, did you say you're going to walk around the park 25 times and it's 3.6k?
Yes.
That's 90 kilometres.
Yes.
Crikey. Okay, good luck. And
You're more than welcome to join me.
for one lap. We could all do one each.
Yeah. I will have a GPS tracking location on the Facebook events page, which I will email to you, so you can see where I am at all times during the walk. So, and I invite the community board also to come with me. So,
90 kilometres is just a warm-up for Kelly Barber, but the rest of us, it's a
Be a struggle. Okay, thank you very much, Stephen. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck. The next item on the agenda is presentation of petitions. There are no presentation of petitions, and I'll move the open and the PX minutes. Do I have a seconder? Mike Davidson, put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Now we move on to the monthly report from the community boards, and there is one monthly report this time, and as it will be in the future, and I'll invite each of the community boards to come up one after the other for their presentation, and then the report will be moved and seconded as a whole. So could I invite Alexandra Davids, and I don't know if you have Michelle with you, no, Grace, from the Waikura Linwood Central Heathcote Community Board. Thank you.
Thank you for having us, and yes, I have my amazing clicker Arahanui with me again today, so thank you. Kia ora everyone. So the board have been super busy again since last time we met. We have obviously had the approval of the landscape plan for the construction of the Sumner Skate Park and the adoption of the Greening of the East Development Plan. We're really proud to have given the tick to both of these projects, as they are board priorities in our community board plan. The community are really excited, especially with the construction of the skate park. I had Facebook memories come up from over 6 years ago the other day. And that's when we had our massive community meeting where we basically said we were going to do it, but now we're doing it, so it's a really positive thing for that community. We have had several public forums. We had Mr. Selwyn Eagle representing the Just Dirt Trust. I believe he's been around a couple of the community boards, and he was updating us on all of the valuable work that the trust are doing within our communities. We also had Miss Colleen Phillip, who is a local resident. She updated the board on the refurbished bird aviary on Woodham Park and discussed with the board a proposed project to make Woodham Park a place for people to connect. The board will visit Woodham Park to consider how Ms Phillips' idea might be progressed. Linwood North is an area that hasn't attracted as much community board attention as we might have liked, so this is a good opportunity for us to start reaching into that community a bit more. On Sunday we had our Lancaster Park site visit. The visit to view the work on the park was really successful, and we just want to say a massive thank you to staff and the contractor who facilitated it. Seeing the situation on the ground gave us all a much better understanding of the challenges facing the team, especially the process of preparing the site, which has so much deconstruction work to do before they can even start the construction. And it's a massive site, and you can only appreciate the enormity of the work ahead when being there, and it will be an amazing green space for the area, which is currently described by that community as a total concrete jungle. So it'll be really great for that community. On to Innovating Streets. We've all talked about it quite a lot because it's a very fantastic project. But we're delighted with the new Innovating Streets cycleway in Ferry Road, and the ongoing feedback is providing opportunity for minor alterations to take place as well. But this is something that has been looked at nationally as a project that is something that we can be proud of as a city. So well done, everyone. We've had a bunch of community events as usual. We had the Fresh Central Hoops event. It was a great afternoon. It was on the 21st of April at the Youth Hub in the centre of town. This was a collaborative effort with YCD and Gap Filler and attracted a good crowd of young people and their families. And once again, we had free haircuts. I swear everybody in our ward are going to be the freshest looking people with all of the free haircuts we give out. And we also had a graffiti workshop, which was actually a really big hit. But yeah, an awesome afternoon. And then moving on to our Youth Week. So we had the Fresh Life event on Saturday night, and we want to say a massive thanks again to YCD and to the management team of Eastgate Mall, who entrusted the southern wing of the mall to upwards of 350 young people on Saturday night. A whole range of entertainment was available, and Linwood young people definitely voted with their feet on this one, and this is what kicked off our Youth Week. So it was awesome. We had food, drink, haircuts again, we had braiding, we had activity rooms, and we literally had toddlers through to teenagers and parents. So yeah, it was a really awesome community event. We have some things coming up for our ward, obviously. But we have our closing event for Youth Week, which is a ball, which is going to be held at Woolston Club this Friday night. So everybody's really looking forward to that. And we also have our Bromley traffic meeting coming up. So these meetings are obviously really good to get the community together. We'll be holding the meeting on the 24th of May at the Bromley Community Centre to enable community members to give feedback on the range of transport and related projects programmed for the area, and to discuss opportunities for addressing issues and concerns through this activity. So this has been something that has been delayed due to COVID and many other things, but we're finally able to get that underway. So we're looking forward to meeting with the community. There's just one last thing I would like to bring up. And that is just around the flooding on Richardson Terrace. It's something that the board has had the public come and discuss with us quite often and frequently, and has been an issue for many years. While we have works planned for the future, we still have several years of young children having to walk through very flooded streets to get to school, and the board just wanted to bring it to the attention of the council that we would love to have a temporary plan in place in order for it to be safe for our tamariki. But that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Just on that matter, the Chief Executive is going to follow that up with staff to see whether there could be a joint approach with the community board and staff to actually look at that specific problem, and if it requires any council input, which I hope that it can be resolved locally, then that can happen in due course. So, but thank you for bringing it to our attention.
Yeah, no, really appreciate the support.
Very good. Are there any quick questions? Because I'll... No? Thank you very much.
Cool.
Oh. No, we're not. We're not.
Move on. We're not.
It's a new era. It's a new day. And Now I'll invite Emma Norrish and Simon Britton, Chair and Deputy Chair of Waipapa Papanui Innes Community Board, to come forward.
Kia ora koutou, thank you for having us here today.
Glorious photograph.
It's an amazing building, and that photo just, and even just the autumn colours on the trees, it's fabulous. And Simon's going to talk a bit more about that now.
I am. So, thank you to those who attended on the 10th of April, early last month. Just acknowledge the Mayor and Chief Executive for attending, as well as other elected members, and of course all of the local community for the opening of Kohinga, the St Albans Community Centre. So we had a few more photos there. So we cut a ribbon, we planted a tree, we cut a cake, we had a blessing of the building, we had the kapa haka group, we had the speeches. I think we pretty much achieved everything on the list of things that you do to recognise such a significant event, and so long in the making in terms of the time it's taken to get to this point since the earthquakes and the whole story of the site and the impact on the community since then. So, it was there's a Newsline story about this as well that captures a little bit more of that story. So, thanks to those who attended, and please do check it out if you haven't done so already.
The problem with the slides, I think we did have some more pictures that haven't shown up.
Oh.
They're showing on our screen, but not up there.
Oh.
They are.
Anyway, I'll carry on. The next slide was going to be about a new social enterprise that's really exciting. It's happening in Shirley. There's an outfit called Nourish Oraka, and it's supplying 325 healthy school lunches to Shirley Primary School as part of the government's free lunch in schools program. It was set up by two locals who saw the opportunity for the wider community with the support of the Shirley Village project. They saw it as opportunities for local parents to work locally and within school hours, which are two barriers to a lot of parents being able to find work. There's 10 people employed so far. They're using a premises in the Atchison Avenue shops, which is helping to activate this less than vibrant commercial area. They've got a focus on sustainability. They deliver the lunches by bike trailer. They're using reusable lunch boxes. They are composting waste at local community gardens, and they have a view to eventually using all locally grown produce. And obviously any profits, being a social enterprise, will be used for community development. So it's really exciting to see that happening, and we'll do what we can to help them out.
Slides are up now. So we recently had the Christchurch Walking Festival, which is a city-wide event. In our board area, we went on a bear hunt, which is a regular feature of the festival. We had 500 children and parents participate in that. In Mariho, that was organised by, or in collaboration with the Shirley Community Trust. Also in our board area at the north end, with Otu Kaikino Creek and wetlands, there was a couple of walking events there as well within our board area. So thanks to everybody who participated in those.
We had board members attend two Anzac Services held in our area. First up there was the Belfast service at the Cenotaph in Sheldon Park, and then the Papanui RSA's parade and service in Papanui. It was a good turnout at both events, and I certainly got the feeling at both of those services that people had really missed being able to get together to remember last year, and so made extra effort this year. So it was great to see.
Last week, the Waipapa Papanui Innes Board, as well as the Waitai Coastal Burwood Board, had a site visit along the Styx River. It was a guided tour of parts of the river and some of the reserves along there, Pūhara Kekanui. Looking at progress with plantings and regeneration, a really interesting takeaway from that for me was the area that is now planted along that river. There's more native bush in that area, more area and also more diversity of native bush than we've had in Christchurch, even in the mid-1800s when both Riccarton and Papanui bush were still standing. The area we've got today is larger than that. And in particular, these photos are both taken at what's now named Te Wāku Kahikatea. It formerly was the Styx River Reserve No. 2. It's just recently been through a renaming process. There are trees in there that were planted 9 years ago. You can now walk under the canopy of those trees. So yeah, thanks to the Styx River Living Laboratory Trust and the others that assisted in taking us around and showing us some of those places. It was a really good morning.
And then finally, just a couple of updates on the issues arising from the Christchurch Northern Corridor. With the noise concerns in Redwood, this is continuing to be worked on by the local MP, Duncan Webb, with Waka Kotahi. He received a response, which council will no doubt receive sometime soon as well. And that claimed that noise levels are not excessive. However, more sound monitoring is being done over a full 24-hour period as requested by residents. And they also said that they cannot legally lower a speed limit for reasons other than road safety in the short term, and permanent changes are a much longer process. So we'll deal with that once council gets the response as well, I believe. Then on downstream issues from the motorway, staff are continuing to monitor vehicle numbers travelling through St Albans. There is a dedicated email address for residents to report any issues or any ideas they've got or anything like that. As a result of the traffic calming trials which have been held in Francis Ave and the impacts that those had on the surrounding streets, the decision was made by the board and staff to take a step back from trialling any solutions on individual streets and develop a plan for the wider area. This will include a lot more further engagement with the local community, and we had a meeting last week with board members and staff and some Flockton Ave residents, and that was really positive, looking at how we can move forward and mitigate the effects that they're feeling on that street. Any questions?
Good, thank you. Any questions for Emma or Simon?
There are some good ones here.
Let's just quickly
We
jump
go back to the
We
second
missed
one.
those ones.
Oh, there you go. Pauline's the one I would want too. That was awesome. I was just simply going to mention that I've been to an event there since the opening, and it was for the launch of the Sakina Community Trust, a woman-led community organisation focused on community healing and recovery post March 15. And it was an excellent event, and the environment was amazing. So it's a treasure. It really is. So yeah, well done, Pauline.
Can I just add to that the feedback from the people who are manning the reception area from day one.
Staffing do not need to be gender
Peopling,
neutral.
the people who are peopling it have just from day one it just went off. People are pouring through the doors, and the bookings are soaring through the roof. So it's taken off with a whoosh and a roar, and it makes you wonder where the people were before that was there. So it's really successful, and I just can't thank our council for and everyone around the table here for supporting the rebuild of that centre for the community. It's very well valued, so it's exciting. Thanks.
Well, I mean, I've got it in my report too, but I'll just mention it here in your report that you know the use of wood in terms of carbon emissions are just outstanding. So I mean, just in terms of a model of building a community centre, it really is incredible. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Next we have the Waihoro Spread and Cashmere Community Board, and we've got Carolyn Potter. Not sure if Lee's here today. No. So thank you.
Kia ora tātou. Just before I start on the words and the pictures, we had our garden show last night. It was wonderful. We had huge numbers of people. The connection with the community is just terrific. We introduced 10-year, 20-year and 30-year prizes this year for people who had participated. The 30-year prize went to a couple who have been married and gardening for 72 years in reality, and everybody was thrilled to meet with them. And we also had a garden show, a garden award for a 98-year-old man who had just died, and we gave, and his family were there, and it turned out he was the youngest and last living son of Ernest Adams. And he was incredibly handsome in his 90s. He was an amazing looking man. We had a terrific time. And last week, which isn't in our report but will be in the next one, we had a breakfast with local MPs who don't hold back actually when they talk to us, and there's a couple of issues that I've already raised with people around the table here to see if I can get further information. But starting with up there, we had, as usual, we had a lot of people come to public forum. It's the best thing the council's done in years introducing this. And a resident spoke about the impact of new high-density developments in communities, and I'm really interested in the nuances of this because residents don't complain about high, intensive housing next door to them that is low profile. And they don't complain about that. They complain about things that look like Addington Prison. There were people from 110 Shalimar Drive, which used to be a vineyard, and a long-standing vineyard owned by very generous people who always contributed wine to community events. And these residents of the property noted that they'd like the council's going to probably sell it, but they wanted the council to retain it. We had people from Valley Road asking about the walking track off Valley Road. We had traffic safety in schools, which is a constant topic. I think all the boards would have that in common. And we had young people talking about basketball, which I have mentioned before, and basketball, as we all know, is the fastest rising sport and has overtaken rugby in its importance to young people. We also had a site visit as well. I should mention this. The staff had a site visit with staff about potential sites for a half court in our area. We had public forum again about wilding trees and Purehour Reserve. The person who came and saw us about Purehour Reserve is so enthusiastic, and she's done so much work. It's absolutely inspiring, the work that she's put in. And our hard-working urban park ranger has been involved with her as well. We had a report about fibre connection in particular from Huntsbury. We had several residents come from Huntsbury, probably at least it felt like a dozen, at least a dozen, who came to see us about the lack of connection in the Huntsbury neighbourhood. And you can see the gap between the rest of Huntsbury and them at the top of the hill, and that is the gap that Enable talks about being impossible to surmount without them funding the fibre connection. In terms of principle, not money, it is strange that people in our wards cannot get fibre connection without paying money when I got it for absolutely free. And I wonder if we're valuing information and the freedom of access to information and freedom of expression, one of the fundamental human rights here, in terms, because I think technology's got us a little bit stumped about access to freedom of information and freedom of expression. And I'm not sure that the council and the rest of us shouldn't be discussing how we get these people and others like them within the city boundaries, how we get them what we have taken for granted. And it just seems that there is a lack of justice there. And we approved a grant to the Apawa Heskat River Network, which is a relatively new organisation. It celebrated 10 years last year. And they have been of major importance in our community and other communities in connecting the river to the community, the river to young people in particular, the river to all the agencies that have been involved with the river all the way to the estuary under one roof. And they have led in the most intelligent and democratic way changes all the way along the river. And we have been closely aligned with them right since their beginning. And we gave a grant to the Summerfield Community Centre towards a power meter project, which sounds pretty weird, but it's about a long-term tenant and them being able to assess fairly the power that they each use. That's the fibre connection. Here we're discussing the fibre connection again. And I'd really like us all to think about those, the issues that have been raised by them. The Friends of Farnley Reserve, that's another new group looking after a very small area which was beautifully designed behind the Centaurus Road shops. And it was beautifully designed when it was established. And here it is again with a group of local people in the community restoring it to its former glory. And those are eels and things. They're running across that concrete. You can't quite see them in this picture, but there's engravings of eels and river life in that picture there. This is the board member, a very important board member, and friends in our community. That's Evelyn Keneally, who runs the Rowley House, Rowley Resource Centre. And who's between her? Teresa. I couldn't remember her name. I was going to say Pearl for some reason. And the wonderful councillor for the area. And you can't see it, but there were 350 people there. And MPs from Wellington, ministers from Wellington, local dignitaries, including our mayor, amazing numbers of people. When I first got the invitation, I replied, yes, I'd be honoured to come. What can I bring? I had no idea it was about 350 people. I thought it was about 8 of us in the local community meeting in a house on Hoonhay Road. At Addington School's request, we invited Waka Kotahi to brief us on the Bromley Street project. I've mentioned that before to you as well. This is the Bromley Street. Waka Kotahi has been very forthcoming in talking to us about this project, and we'd like to thank them for that. They have been listening to the local community and to the board on the issues that have been raised by Bromley Street, which are, of course, as the people in the northern suburbs would know, absolutely unending when we're discussing the motorway. Absolutely unending. And it's an incredibly difficult issue to discuss. That has been made even more difficult by our lack of any understanding of the plan for the future of traffic and transport in Christchurch. And so we'd hope that we would be able to get underway on understanding how Christchurch itself sees traffic in the future and how we shift freight. But we hope to come back to the public later this year to get feedback on the ideas and designs that Waka Kotahi and the City Council are working on for the stretch of Bromley Street in our ward and in our neighbours in Linwood Central too. Coming up, we have a combined board discussion. Anzac Day. Our board instituted an Anzac Day at Waltham Gates when we still had Waltham in our area, and then later we moved it to the Sydenham Cemetery. And we have our celebration here quietly with community in the grave, in front of the grave of 2 brothers who clearly got home safely but died in the epidemic in 1918. Almost on the day of the armistice. We also give a wreath at the formal RSA celebration up at the Regimental Park up at Victoria Park, and that's a more formal one with formal associations with it, including the singing of the national anthem. This one is much more about family, descendants, the sacrifice of war made by everyone, not just the soldiers who go, and it means a lot to the community, and so does the one on the hill, albeit in a different way. And you're dead right about the gathering of people. It's very important. Coming up, we have a combined meeting with our neighbours, Linwood Central, and to discuss what we're discussing? CRAF project, which is the green spine, transport and a central hub in our areas. Most of the work is going to be being done in our neighbourhood, in Linwood and Central, and we will only be a minority of the work. But if the rep review goes ahead, they'll be incorporated into the new wards that will be Waihoro. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Tim?
It's just that the photos for Brum Street look like an advertising thing, because the crossing there where the kids were going across, quite often trucks and cars are parked right across the crossing, and you can imagine the angst of parents and the school and the kids trying to zigzag and manoeuvre past those trucks, etc. So that is actually, I think, staged, but we won't go any
It
further
doesn't
on that
show
one.
the cage, you know, the cage that the residents have to stand in to keep themselves safe.
Yeah, so it's actually like an advertising thing for cars, but yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, look, thank you very much for your presentation today.
Thank you.
Tyrone Fields, Te Pātaka o Rākaihotu, Banks Peninsula Community Board. And apologies from Tori Peting today. Thank you.
Kia ora tātou. So I'm obviously subbing in for Tori today. So Pen, what have we got? So, we've got a Part A, of course, which is Ardles Road and Devotials, which I understand is coming back to Council for consideration. That went through Community Board pretty easily, because, you know, I guess we understand that there's a lot of properties of that nature on the peninsula that sort of have some trickiness around boundaries. So hopefully, our board supports that, the staff recommendation. So onto our presentation. So we'll start off with a feel good. So we often get visited, as most boards do, by schools in our area. Governor's Bay School have come to see us a few times recently, and we always absolutely love having them there. This time they've come to talk to us about the Hilda Frame Reserve. Now, Hilda Frame was a resident of Governor's Bay who passed away in 1981 at the age of 80, and she fostered over 100 children over the course of her life, which is a lot. And so Governor's Bay has a very strong history of child welfare and looking after children. So she's in that tradition. So the reason the school came to see us was because they would like to formalise a reserve, or the naming of a reserve in the Governor's Bay area that's opposite their school, which is informally known as the Hilda Frame Reserve. So they're looking to get some proper signage up there. It's one of those things that, you know, it should seem pretty straightforward. Get some signs up, acknowledge, you know, a wonderful resident of Governor's Bay in the past. So they're looking for some funding to do that, and probably apply for a heritage grant. On to the next thing, Pen. So Red House Bay Reserve, Takapuneki. So first of all, I'd really like to acknowledge how grateful our board is to this council for approving the funding to purchase the house, the Red House at Takapuneki. It's an incredibly important historic site, not just for the city but for the country, and obviously for mana whenua from Onuku Marae. So at our meeting on the 3rd of May, the board has started the process to vest the Red House as a historic reserve in line with the Takapuneki Reserve Management Plan 5.16.5, which just for plan nerds out there. So we've started that process, and we'd really like to see that go through as easily and as quickly as possible. So, you know, discussions that I've had with Onuku, talked to Riki Tainui, who's the representative on Papatipurunanga for Ngāi Tahu, and, you know, he has just said that it means so much to the people there, and so we're really delighted that the entire council and community board and community could come together and make that happen. Akaroa water. So the poor old people of Akaroa have had a bit of an interesting time with water of late, right from their reservoir that's had some visitors of late floating around in it, all the way through to their pipes, which are in various stages of repair, all the way through to wastewater. And again, we're very, very grateful for this council to continue supporting the Akaroa wastewater project. So they had a meeting attended by 47 people back in 29th of April. Now, 47 people in terms of per head of population for Akaroa is the equivalent of having, probably enough people to fill a stadium in the flatlands in Christchurch. So it's very well attended. Their main issue were when are level 4 restrictions going to be lifted. So that's a real concern for the people of Akaroa. And also, our councillor Andrew Turner got involved in some discussions around, let's make Akaroa the first place in New Zealand to install purple pipes. So that's with, recycled water and that sort of stuff. So, there's an opportunity for Akaroa and Christchurch to lead the way in there and be an exemplar location to do something special there with the way we work with water. And that's probably us. Oh, and then there's a whole lot of bits and pieces of what we've been up to. A lot, like all boards are up to a lot. In terms of, just to reiterate what Carolyn said, public forums. That's a wonderful way to hear the voice of our community. We absolutely love people coming to see us. About local issues. Probably the key thing I just want to pick out from there is the representation review. So obviously our board's made a submission on that. We do have some special arrangements and we'd very strongly like to see those retained. Obviously the peninsula is an area of special interest with a lot of special communities. It's very isolated, and obviously we have a very strong relationship with mana whenua, with our four marae. Out on the peninsula, so that's probably the key thing there. And obviously, and we had very well attended 4 Anzac Day services on Anzac Day, and that went very smoothly. That's probably me.
Thank you. Are there any questions? No? Look, thank you very much for your presentation today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Waitai Coastal Bird Community Board, Kelly Barber. Kia ora, welcome.
Good morning, everybody. I'm joined again by Christopher Turner, Governance Manager, with fantastic glasses. Thanks. I paid $2 for these, $4 for these at a $2 shop, so I know what's going on there. Very exclusive suit, thank you. From a very exclusive German tailor, Mr. Hallenstein. Hallensteins, for those of you that... anyway, moving along with the business at hand. So, we've had a busy time. Happy to report on a number of positive good progress in 2 wards of Coastal and Burwood. Approval of the installation of some new lights in Thompson Park, which will make a bit of a difference for practicing teams. Also, the DRF fund has been spent wisely on the resurfacing of a 3rd court for the Burwood Tennis Club, very active club in our community. Also, we provided some funding for the New Brighton Community Gardens Trust for mentoring and equipment. I don't know whether any of you have ever been down there, but they run a wonderful organisation. Is there anything more therapeutic than spending a bit of time in the garden? And I think that some of the work they do with people there is really good for our community. Moving right along. So another expense from our DRF fund has gone to the reinstatement of the Anzac fronds and the approval of a concept design. We're really pleased to support this. For those of you that don't remember, these fronds used to be on the Anzac Bridge, which was the newest road bridge over the Avon in our 2 wards. and they were taken off after the earthquake. They were stored. The community has been very interested in seeing them come back. They were really quite a unique sculpture, so that's about to happen. So we're just going through the process of making that happen. Another positive thing that I wanted to bring to your attention was we recently approved in Rauwhiti Domain the sort of natural play area landscape plan. So they're going to take down the old playground that was there and build a fantastic new kind of natural play facility, which would probably not be unlike being in a bit of a forest with a fort and those sorts of things that expand people's imagination. So, some other things, community funding. The board's received 72 applications for to the Strengthening Communities Fund. That's a lot. That's the most across the city. I guess it reflects our community. It's very, very active. There are a lot of people doing a lot of things, and at the end of the day, this is what we want. And the more we can encourage these groups, the better. Upcoming, there's an event capacity workshop which happened on 19th of May. Am I ahead of myself or am I behind myself? There. So it's coming up on the 19th of May. Engagement and consultation. Obviously, you're all aware of all the consultations that have been going on. It's been a busy time for everybody, but we've been working our way through that. So we had a meeting in Parklands community recently. There was a little bit of concern about a small group of young individuals who were causing a bit of chaos in the area, as young people do. One of the locals, Grant Donnell, was concerned about it. He put together an idea for a meeting, which he came to us, which was really well supported. We had 130 people at the first meeting, where community expressed their concerns about what was going on. As always, it comes down to a second meeting, when people are asked to front up and decide what they're going to do about it. And at this second meeting, there were 31 people, fairly representative of a lot of the groups in the area, the bowling club, the rugby club, the Residents Association, and some of the churches. And it was really good and really positive. One of the great things about this whole event was the fact that Chris Mini was facilitating, and I highly recommend that if you ever have a situation like this, that getting an expert like Chris Mini in to facilitate can turn things that could be just a rant or a negative into some action and some positive results. And I really think this is the way forward. I was unable to go to the first meeting, but the second meeting was really good. We came away with a group that are actually going to sit down and look at some things that we can do. And one of the other great aspects was bringing all the people together in these groups who actually just did a bit of sharing about what they do. And I remember in particular, it was the Pukeko Centre talked about their plans for the area and felt that perhaps they could have sort of enunciated that a little clearer to some of the other groups that weren't aware of some of the things that they were doing for the future and for youth. So, yeah, all in all, a negative turned into quite a positive in the end. So, Anzac Day Service, obviously there was a little bit of information about this in the media. We had 3 services in our area, one informal, a couple of formal ones. I myself attended the New Brighton RSA formal one in New Brighton. Brilliant speakers. They spoke really well. It was a great occasion. I think we paid great respect to our sort of Anzac, legacy. And I think it was a really, really positive event. I mean, obviously there was we can always do things a little better, and we perhaps dropped the ball on a couple of small things. But overall, I think it was really a really positive experience. I enjoyed it, and I know plenty of other people did too. I spent a bit of time at the RSA afterwards, and I didn't hear any complaints. I think most people were quite happy. It was an interesting occasion when 2 microlights came over and were very loud. They were obviously having a bit of a look from just above, but sort of drowned everyone out for a few minutes while they buzzed around. Freedom of the skies. So a few other things have been going on. Obviously the walking festival in 2021 on during the school holidays. 11 walks were held in the coastal Burwood area, and probably the one that was most popular was the popular Gruffalo Explorers Walk through Bottle Lake Plantation, which had 2,500 people attend, which is outrageous when you think about it. Yeah, good numbers. And also Have a Go disc golf session at QE2 Park. Don't know whether you guys know much about disc golf, but it is an incredibly popular pastime. There's a few courses, particularly in our part of town, and you just about always see people there throwing discs around. I don't know whether you've ever been to Queenstown. They've got one there, and it's always really well attended. It's golf with frisbees, essentially. Who would have thought? So, red zone events. So good to see this area being utilised and activated. There was a mountain bike race in there recently. And moving on to the next slide, Christopher. So local artist Dr. Suits and a street art organisation Watch This Space have put together an amazing 80s inspired road mural. So you'll recognise these colours if you remember 80s videos, music videos, or you have an interest in professional cycling teams from the 1980s. They wore colours like this. That's quite a unique thing. So that's not far from Donnell Park in the red zone, just down the road from where I used to live. Hey, James. And so, yeah, that's all. Any questions at all?
Thank you. I've just asked the team to put up a picture for you, just to leave you with a nice reflection of the Anzac fronds that you were talking about. I took that picture after the earthquakes, and it's, I think it's stunning, but there you go. So I'd love to hear that it's going to have something happen with the fronds themselves. Are there any questions? No? Well, thank you very much for your report.
You're welcome. You'll see those before the end of the financial year. So
excellent. Very pleased.
Thank you very much.
Well, invite me along because I want to see them again.
We will be.
Good. Waimairo, Fendleton Waimairi Hereward Community Board, Chairperson Bridget Williams and Deputy Chair David Cartwright. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you so much. Tēnā koutou katoa. So, yep, Bridget Williams and obviously David Cartwright here is Deputy. Here we go. Nice. So here are some of the decisions that we've made recently. So we have 5 decisions being made under discretionary response fund allocations, approved a process for staff delegation for YDF grants under $350, and also the approved new road name for 30 Merrion Street, Graham Cooper Lane. So this was a really wonderful experience where some of the family came to present around the history of the site, and it was just a great example of learning obviously about the history, but also giving space for the community to share the connection that they have to that space. And then here we have so progress on what's going on. So old caretaker's house at Burnside Park, the demolition is completed, which is fantastic. So going forward, the plan to remove the fencing and overgrown shrubbery and to return to park space, and there has already been a number of residents who have contacted us to thank us for getting this work done, so this is a wonderful one. And then progress on the community board plans priorities. So we have the big belly bins. This is very exciting to see our big belly bins being installed. The board contributed funding from its DRF to have bins installed in Aberley Park, Bishopdale Park, Burnside Park and Avonhead Park. And we also have the Avonhead Russley Safety Initiative. So this is a working party made up of the Fendleton Waimairi Hereward community board members and governance staff, Neighbourhood Support Canterbury, Christchurch North Community Patrol, New Zealand Police and MP Sarah Pallett, all working together to putting out an information booklet on keeping yourself, your property and your community safe in the Avonhead Russley area over the next month. They will also be conducting an initial survey to check in with the community on the criminal and unsociable activity, and looking for ways to support bringing the community together to respond to this. So this project is hopefully going to be a pilot of a partnership approach and working with other communities across the board area. And we also have the Elmwood Park Bowling Club. They have applied for the council to the council for permission to demolish their old earthquake-damaged club rooms and replace it with a new single-storeyed building that better meets their club's needs. The building is slightly wider than the existing building footprint, but it is single-storeyed rather than double-storeyed. It includes club rooms with kitchen and bar facilities, toilets, and an administration area, and the bowling club is rebuilding in the same location. They have a licence to occupy the land that dates back to 1949, when the council and the Elmwood Park Bowling Club purchased the property. So a resource consent has already been issued for this building that covers the design, shape, colour and height of the building and the facilities inside. And lastly, we have the community project's miniature Anzac display. So this year, the Whenua Te Maumāori Harewood governance staff supported Jeff and Joe Cotton to help put their Anzac Day display of miniatures at All Souls Church in Maryvale. Almost 400 people came through on the day, and the comments back from the attendees were overwhelmingly positive, saying how good it was for all ages, all levels of understanding, how much it meant and how it stimulated interest and how it was really appreciated by those who had direct connections to Anzacs. And we will be looking to continue partnering with them for this, for the next year, and how we can make it even bigger and better, even though it's for miniatures. Cool. So that's us, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you. That was quite interesting. I hadn't seen that miniatures display before, so that's very good. Are there any questions? Sam?
Probably just a really quick comment. I'm always nervous when we have working groups and things like that, but the one around the safety initiative in Avonhead is working really, really well, and it's cost the council very little in terms of the output we're getting, so it's a great model that I think we'll be able to demonstrate in time real value for the city that we can replicate. So it's a really good one that the team have led.
Yeah, in many respects it's like the safer Christchurch model, but at a demonstrably local level, which is great. And
just following on from that, because I think it's a fantastic initiative. So is that the board leading that, and they're bringing people together, or is it being led by somebody else?
I mean, it's sort of collaborative leadership, but it's definitely something that's come through neighbourhood support. And then we're all sort of covering our own little patch as to how we bring it together. So yeah, it's a great example of collaboration, and we've been meeting every second week, I believe, coming together to see updates. And so yeah, the next stage is a booklet that's going out to residents, and then following that, probably a public meeting or something of the like where we can hear residents' feedback.
That's terrific. It would be great to have a bit more information, maybe through when you have the combined chairs meetings, just to share that model. I think it's great. Thank you.
yeah, I wondered also whether, when the booklet's done, whether that could be shared through the Christchurch Safer Communities Partnership.
We can do that.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Well done. Good work.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the last one is Waipuna, Hallsville, Hornby, Richardson Community Board, Chair Mike Mora.
Good morning, team. Thank you, Leanne and councillors. An apology from my deputy, Helen Broughton, who can't be with us today. So
She was here yesterday.
Sorry?
She was here yesterday.
Yes, I understand that you had some good submissions from our area yesterday, so, and our board. So that's and I was really pleased to see the interest being taken in the presentation of those submissions. But anyway, we're here today. The part A is the old Hallsville Library, which is a real asset and gem in our community. So we're very, very pleased that the staff are supporting the retention of that facility and to make it available in perpetuity, really, for the Hallsville community. So we're really pleased about that. And we've also got the accessible recreation project in Hallsville, and that's been put together by it's a partnership with Child and Youth Friendly Christchurch, which is a bit like SIFS, but it's a different organisation altogether, and that's to provide accessible play equipment for people of all ages and disabilities as well, which is really, really good. So that's going to be an asset to the whole area of Christchurch. People will come from far and wide to enjoy that facility, and the total cost is $45,000, and the Child and Youth Friendly organisation have come up with $33,000, and the board is funding the shortfall of just over 11,000. So that's something. And the conga drums, I'm just wondering how I'm going to play them, because there's going to be a fair bit of running between one drum and the other. So it's I'll give it a go anyway. I'm looking forward to that. If anybody wants to come down with some additional music to join me, that'd be great. Get Active Harrington Park. This is a pilot project with the governance team, and in partnership with Epic Sports, and the project Oak Development in the Richardson Baptist Church, Community Church. So that's something it's on every Friday for 6 weeks, and it's catering for 3 to 13-year-olds free. So that's been, well attended and well received, isn't it, so far? So that's something that we're really, really pleased of, keeping young people active. And Waikola Park. So I know you've had deputations and submissions on that issue, but I'm just really pleased with the way our community board staff are working with the community, and there's a range of other players in this development, which includes rangers and community volunteers, Maori wardens, and the police with the SIP-TED, and we're in the process of obtaining a building, aren't we? Refurbishing a building in that area. It was the old Plunkett building, for one of our community groups is going to take it over for a sort of a youth hangout. So that's going to be a good asset to that area as well. So we're really looking forward to that. And as you've probably heard in the submissions, that there is a renewal plan for the park to be completed in 2026. And we're just pleading that be brought forward if we can, because it's in a strategic location, but it's run down. And other than that, our board have been busy with submissions, and just like to thank our staff as well. They meet with our submissions committee, get the feeling of what we want in our submissions, and then staff write them up in draft form, and it's been a real good team effort. So just like to thank staff for that. And it's really great to see the work every time we go up and down Waterloo Road, to see the work happening on our new Southwest Leisure Centre, Library and Service Centre, isn't it, Brother Jimmy? Lovely to see that. Lovely to see that work going on. And I know it's been touched on before, but we've had joint meetings with our Fennelton, Harewood Fennelton Waimaori Community Board as well, just yesterday, about the craft study. So, and we're going to be having another meeting with them as well about that, and we're going to have a meeting with them about the Northwest Arc as well. So, does that make sense to have two community boards coming together when it's a joint cross-boundary issues? So that's it from us in the southwest of Christchurch.
Excellent, thank you. Excellent presentation. Do I have any questions for Mike? Jimmy.
Yeah, only one question, particularly regarding to the Waikola Park, the skateboard, because at the moment they have 3 different, make submission. I just want to know, probably because the first year is 20K for planning and the design. However, in moment, I understand the view still slightly different, you know. Whether what kind of size, you know.
Well, we haven't
need
had
to
any
have a
design,
meeting,
and that's
yeah.
what hoping that this process now will bring forward some concepts on design and what's needed in that area of the skate park. And one of the things that I was going to suggest, but I haven't yet, but it's been done before, where we invite young people on a weekend and have a sausage sizzle barbecue going, and have somebody that's got expertise in designing skate parks to talk with the young people and get some. Well, all people actually don't have to be young to enjoy those facilities. Go to Washington Way and see parents and grandparents, and everybody's there. So that's what we're hoping will happen, and get something sorted out for that area. It'd be really, really good.
Anne?
It's more of a comment actually. Child Friendly Cities is really a worldwide organisation that really aims to put a child at the centre of decision making in cities. So they've been very keen to lead this, to provide for families who may have disabled children and able-bodied children, but have to drive kilometres to try and find a play area where all of their family can be catered for. So this has been a lot of terrific work, and really appreciated the support from the Community Board for this.
Thank you.
It looked like a great partnership.
Thank you for that question.
Thank you, Mike. That's much appreciated. So I will now move that we receive the monthly report from the community boards, seconded by Sarah. Yanni?
2 additional resolutions, which I've sent through.
I've seen those resolutions, and I'm going to rule them out of order. And the reason I'm ruling them out of order is because the council doesn't have enough information to make the decision, funding process options, cost benefits, implications, in order for the council to comply with its decision-making obligations in the Local Government Act. And the council is currently considering these matters in its long-term plan. So I'm ruling it out of order. So on that basis, I will put the motion.
I'd like to speak to the...
Yanni?
Yeah, thank you. Just to pick up on the huge frustration with the Richardson Terrace issue that was raised by our local community board. In 2018, the board asked for a landscape plan along the Apawaho Heathcote River for this stretch, because we were aware that Kiwi Rail were going to do a bridge replacement, we were aware that council was going to do land drainage, and we were aware that the council was also looking at major cycleways going through this vicinity. So that was in 2018. Sadly, we still have no comprehensive plan for the area, but what we've seen is a whole bunch of individual projects that don't talk to each other being done in isolation, which is costing us a fortune. The opportunity to actually get some cost savings by improving a flooding and a safety issue to encourage more pedestrians and safer cycling through this area makes so much sense. It's really hard to understand why this cannot be done. The reality is that the board, even when we knew that the Kiwi Rail bridge replacement program was going on in October, asked for a landscape plan to be developed. We got the advice 2 days back. We got the advice back within 2 days of that project supposed to be concluded at the end of April. We got it on the 28th of April for a project that was supposed to finish on the 30th of April, missing out on the opportunity to get that done. It seems crazy, but that project was actually extended. So we still have an opportunity while Fulton Hogan's on site to think about cost savings and synergy and get the work done. There is money on budget for the MCR. It is in forward years. There has been a route selection presentation given to the Spraydon Cashmere board that shows that this area is the area where the cycleway is going. I'll hold it up so everyone can see. So staff have already done some work on this. What is so hard about actually getting a plan in place and doing it at the same time? I completely feel that the local residents have been incredibly frustrated at our slow progress and the inability of council to do things in a timely manner together with a community that has desperately called out for it. I've sent you a letter from a local GP who has also written in in November last year. This shouldn't be this hard. There are simple solutions that could be put in place by working together, and I cannot understand the reluctance to actually get some solutions to this issue. So, I'll support the reports that are coming through, but I think council needs to learn from this and try and save money and do things in a better way.
I'm just going to express a degree of frustration with using the community board reports as a mechanism for raising an individual issue in relation to one community board. There is a memo coming out about the project that Councillor Johansson has raised in the very near future, and the community board is going to be working very closely with the local community to find solutions to the problem. I have read the GP letter, and it does indicate to me that there's a significant issue that needs to be addressed before winter really takes its toll on this particular area. So I'm appreciative of issues being raised, but I do object to the very good work of our community boards and the process that they've agreed to enable this to be used in this way. But on that basis, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. The next item on the agenda is 62 Archdale's Road, Devoshell, Structures on Roads proposal. I don't know that we need any presentation on it. I think you're happy to move it, and seconded by Phil Major. Is there any discussion? I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you very much. And abstention by Mike. The next item on the agenda is 381 Hallswood Road, the old Hallswood Library, future use. Very good example of community board work happening there. Again, I'm assuming, Anne, that you want to move it.
Absolutely, yes.
And Jimmy would like to second it. So, we're all familiar with the detail of it. Do people want to have a presentation on it, or? No, you're all good?
Yep.
Is there any debate? Yes, Anne.
Just to say, following on from your the conversation this morning about how coming through the submissions, there's been a strong theme of communities wanting to partner with council to get things done, and this is a fine example of that. So thanks very much for the work that's been done. It's a terrific outcome. Thank you.
Jimmy.
Yes, briefly, yes. This the community board, you unanimous support this one, and also if you review those the kind of information, they have a quite very kind of a comprehensive 5 years those plan, and also the wider the host the community, lots of agency and community, the groups the needs. So that's why we fully support.
Thank you. I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Regulatory Performance Committee minutes. Tim, in moving those, were there any things that you'd like to say?
Yes, thank you. Look, we've heard at the last committee meeting with regards to the increase in both building consents and resource consents. Building consents are up 16%, and resource consents, being regarded as a bit more complicated, obviously have bigger issues. This has added pressure to staff, and it's increasing, it's not decreasing. We're the second largest consenting authority in New Zealand, and we're trying to keep up with our timelines with regards to not only developers but individuals as well, and they're really being stretched. We are having constant meetings with the developers and individuals, which is commendable, but that also adds extra time. And all TAs are under the same pressure throughout New Zealand, and when we had low or we were able to share workloads with our fellow TAs at times, so because building consents are formals wherever you are in New Zealand, just with a few issues with regards to local areas, but they're a standard format. But as it is today, right across New Zealand with the increased pressure, everybody is under pressure and there is poaching of staff, etc. So we're in a really unique situation. So what I would like is a briefing from the staff and to council and made a priority, because there is pressure on our staff. I've brought it up before, I'm bringing it up again, just be aware of it, and we do need, I think, a briefing in front of staff, in front of councillors by staff to just raise the awareness from the coalface.
I'll just invite the Chief Executive just to say a couple of words in relation to the matter.
Thank you, Councillor Scandrett. Executive leadership team has already discussed this matter this week and last week. We've put actions already in place in relation to the challenge, as you said, that all consenting authorities are facing for our own staff, to ensure that we can meet both the demands that we're experiencing and also to facilitate the situation. I'm happy to come and talk to you outside of this because we've already acted.
It does bring up how well we did with irons, because the other TAs were actually quite impressed with how well we did, and so that should really be acknowledged again. So,
yeah, I will never forget arriving here. Within June, July, August, September, October, 4 months after the council involved in consenting the biggest rebuild of our country's history. Having lost its accreditation to issue building consents. It's an extraordinary turnaround in terms of what they have put in place and what we have now. So, Tim, you'll move the minutes, seconded by Aaron. I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you. Then we come to the Te Hononga Council Papatipu Runanga Committee minutes, and there's 2 sets of minutes there which I will move and just simply comment and say I do apologise for not having brought them before the council before. It was an internal oversight in terms of getting the minutes in front of us, but as you will see from the minutes, not that the minutes are particularly detailed, but you'll see that the committee has been briefed on both the requirements of the representation review and also the requirements of engagement at that level in relation to the Papa Kainga Nohoanga plan change. So yes, James, you'll second it. So, Yanni?
Ask a quick question on page 144. It's part of number 8 long-term plan. It said that you noted the release of the plan and then received input and feedback from the 6 Takapuneki Runa. Did they give discrete feedback at the meeting, or is that just their submissions are in the LTP? Because I just wasn't quite clear how we had engaged with them on what was in the LTP from the submission we had the other day.
Yeah. So we briefed the committee in January, and then we did it again on whatever date it was in relation to the specifics, and we have had feedback and the discussions also in relation to coming into the LTP, which we saw evidence of that only yesterday as well by the individual Runanga.
So was there any pre-engagement on what was in the LTP and feedback sought ahead of us putting the draft together from the Papatipu Runas?
That was done in January.
It was?
Yeah.
Okay. Are we able to get a record of that?
Yes, it'll be in the minutes.
Oh, okay. Yeah. We'll get it circulated or...
I'm not imagining it. I do remember doing it.
No. I'm just saying it's not in these minutes, so it may have been a workshop. So
it may have been.
That would be quite useful. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Right. So I've moved that. James has seconded that. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you. The Mayor's monthly report. I won't go through the points that I've already raised. I'll just note the Otakaro Avon River Corridor future governance. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to develop a co-governance model that reflects true partnership with Ngāi Tuhuriri and also the wider community. And that's this is following up on a resolution that was passed in November, so I do apologise for the delay, which I take full responsibility for. We have, in November 2020, we agreed that Ngāi Tuhuriri would be invited to partner with the council to investigate and develop options for the co-governance entity. I guess with a number of issues, including Three Waters, it's been difficult to arrange times to move this issue along. We have now come to the point where we have commissioned preliminary advice from Chris Finlayson, and the next step is to feed this into a symposium under the auspices of the University of Canterbury, which we'd hoped to have earlier this year, but we'll have in about August, I'm expecting, and that I just want to get a small group of people together to work with Ngāi Tuhuriri and the University of Canterbury to develop a framework for that. I'm hoping to be back in a position to report back on this by the end of June, with the symposium to be held before the end of September, and then anticipate that that will then take us to a point where we can agree a recommended way forward by the end of this calendar year. I know that there's been some frustration around the time frame for all of this, and also perhaps there needs to be a better line of sight about the transfer of the land. We don't own all the land yet, and there are significant there's a significant amount of work yet to be done. I don't have a current update on that time frame, so I want us to get the time frame in front of the council, and I would expect to bring that back by the end of June, so that we can get some clarity about the way forward. I know that people want to see progress, and I certainly do as well. I just should tell you that I'm working in my office all day Saturday. We've got Open Christchurch happening this weekend. I don't know if people have been on the website. It is literally called Open Christchurch. .org, I think, something like that, and it's an excellent opportunity to get an inside view of some fabulous architecture, and it's getting to love our architecture, both old and new, and so I'm just going to be sitting up in the Mayor's Lounge, but I'm going to be working in my office in between visits from people who are going to call through and hopefully share an interest in a part of the building that people often don't get to see. The Unity and Diversity Dinner, which actually one of the community boards, I think, referred to, organised by the Bangladeshi Parents Group and Farid Ahmed, was amazing. It was a really good panel discussion on unity and diversity, and excellent, and I won't go into the other bits and pieces. The school strike for climate obviously has led to further discussions with Christchurch International Airport and the students, and we've got the Greater Christchurch Partnership, obviously looking at both the urban growth partnership with central government potential, Greater Christchurch 2050, and what we've all been waiting for, the Mass Rapid Transit Indicative Business Case. So we've got a short progress update happening on that. I think we have another meeting tomorrow, so hopefully further advice will be coming in relation to where that's up to. So a relatively busy month, despite a number of weeks, number of statutory holidays during the period. So, I'll move the recommendation around receiving the report, agreeing a small working group, and that's just for the purpose of the symposium, and and noting that we'll be in a position to recommend an approach by the end of the year. Seconded by Sarah. Any discussion? Mike? Oh, Yanni?
Just had a question on, in the interim, there's a number of decisions that are being made. Our board does have an outstanding action, unfortunately, where we're still waiting to get the advice back. And that was staff advice on decision-making processes on matters pertaining to residential red zone in the Otakaro-Avon River Corridor Program, and also advice on how the community views are included in aspects of the detailed design of projects within the residential red zone and the Otakaro-Avon River Corridor Program for bridges, road closures and cycleways. I know we've had a closed workshop where we've had some briefing, but is it possible to get something in the interim that explains how these decisions are being made and by whom, so the community can kind of understand?
Yeah, I mean, it was partly my problem too, that I can't tell you when the transfer of the land's going to happen. So there's Lynn's, there's our own input.
Bridges are happening now.
But the answer is that Mary will take that on board and will report.
Shall I email you through the community board thing so you can see what was asked
if you do
for?
that. But I think all councillors will want the answer to that question as well.
Yeah, because there are projects currently happening now.
Yeah, I know that there are current projects happening, but there's also lease agreements coming to an end, and so there's a lot of confusion, and largely around the timing of the transfers that will be part of the issue.
And then just, I guess the other key thing to note is that this is by the end of the year, but if it can be done sooner, we will get it sooner, right?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. All right, Aaron?
Yeah, there was no mention of the disability hui in your report, which you spoke at and did the opening address. Did I miss that?
What date was that?
I don't know, it was in the last month.
Might have been in May.
Sorry, I haven't got it in the list of things that I did in that month.
Might be May.
Can you just tell me the date?
Not off the top of my head.
It might have been in May. This is April.
Well, no, maybe it was in April. Look, I do apologise if it's been left out of my diary.
That's all right.
For what I did over the month.
14th of April.
So good. I'll move the newsletter. No.
14th of April.
They can put it away.
It just shows someone's been...
I do apologise. It has been left out. Look, rather than me do it here, why don't I write it up as in the next newsletter and the next report, and I'll include reference to what some of the outcomes have been as well. Yeah, okay. Thank you for raising that. All right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Now, before opposed say no. That's carried. So I will now adjourn the meeting until 11:15. Thank you.
Let's get into it. I believe we've got Alex Skinner here as well. I'm sure everyone knows Alex is independent director of CCHL, and obviously Paul Munro, chief executive. Everyone will know that the council directors are sitting back for this. So Andrew, James, Leanne, and Sarah, who I think, she might be upstairs. So what I'm keen to do is, obviously we left it laying on the table at F&P a couple of weeks ago. I'd just like, perhaps, Alex, do you want to run through a bit of the SOI process stuff? And then Paul, can you just touch on anything you think is pertinent? And then we'll move to questions, obviously realising that Yanni had amendments last time. I think Melanie had an amendment.
Yeah, but
and I don't know whether Mike, there was anything you wanted to raise. Yeah, okay. So let's go with, do you guys want to talk us through it, sort of, at a high level, and then we'll move through?
Yep. Yeah, so thank you. So just from a statement of intent process, obviously it's an accountability document that's owned by the board of each of the subsidiaries. The content itself is governed by the Local Government Act and covers matters like activities, governance process, KPIs, both financial and non-financial, but it doesn't cover strategic plans and it doesn't cover business plans, and that's quite intentional. As shareholders, as CCHL shareholders of subsidiaries and council as shareholder of CCHL, we have the ability to influence the content of the statement of intents, and we can do that through our letter of expectations, which we issue to the subsidiaries and which council issues to us. And also through council meetings and the questions that you raise and pose to us as the ultimate shareholder of the subsidiaries. One of the challenges as commercial entities our subsidiaries have is balancing their commercial expectations versus community expectations. And I can assure you that feedback that we get from council is shared with our subsidiaries, and to the best that they possibly can, they do bring in as many of the community aspects as they can into their statements of intent and the activities that they undertake. So the process that CCHL has gone through, we issued our letter of intent back in December, a robust discussion at the board as to what we anticipated the council will want, and therefore what we were expecting of our subsidiaries. The subsidiaries take that letter of expectations, they develop their statement of intent, they sent us a draft back in March. We then go through a detailed review, which initially is done by CCHL management and then robustly discussed at the board. We consider what was in previous statements of intent. We consider what's happening in the sectors at the moment, what we think the entities should be doing in the future, what KPIs they've identified as being accountable against for the future, and then we provide our feedback back down to the subsidiaries once we've got feedback from you as councillors as well. So I suppose that's the process that we've gone through. We've provided quite a detailed covering letter to the statements of intent, where we've analysed back to your original letter of expectations and where we feel the statements of intent cover those points off. There are a small number of gaps, but overall we're very comfortable with this, where the statements of intent have got to. We've had the opportunity a couple of times in workshops with yourselves to talk through some of the issues which we think are top of mind for councillors. And what I might do is ask Paul just to talk through 5 of those particular issues in this environment.
Very good. Look, thank you everybody, and thank you Alex for that overview. Look, just touching on the sort of 4 or 5 key areas that we have talked about over the last period. CEO remuneration, appreciate the messaging around that, and you'll have noted in the draft CCHL statement of intent that we have endorsed expectations around the need to show restraint, and we have encouraged reporting from our subsidiaries and continuing to work towards narrowing the gap between the highest and lowest remuneration levels. So that commitment is there in the draft statement of intent for your feedback. Living wage, again, we've had several discussions around that over the last several years. I think hopefully through those discussions you'll appreciate some of the commercial challenges around the living wage. Ultimately, to the extent that a living wage introduces an ultimate cost to a business cost to a commercial business and a commercial activity, that cost ultimately will come back to council in some way, shape or form, either through reduced dividends or a direct cost to council. So balancing that against the imperative around supporting our communities and working towards a living wage is part of the challenge for our subsidiary boards. And in the draft SOI, we have undertaken to show an active improvement in continuing to work towards the living wage. It's going to be one of these challenges that we may never fully address because the living wage will keep moving over time, I suspect. In terms of development Christchurch, there's been some questions around that. Obviously, you'll appreciate it was operationally wound up at the end of last year, October, November last year. And we are in the process of working with Christchurch NZ and Christchurch City Council in relation to the pathway and the continuation of the asset realisation process in relation to those development Christchurch assets and what that means in the context of Christchurch NZ's future role around urban development. And so there's work ongoing around that. That work will continue post 30 June, but will reach a landing hopefully not long thereafter. In terms of sustainability targets, the CCHL board in particular have taken quite a strong leadership position around sustainability in a very positive way. You'll see the references in the draft SOI to developing group targets and working towards group carbon neutrality by 2030. The intention to take a group approach is not to mask any individual company performance. Individual companies will have their own targets in addition to the group approach. But the real benefits of a group approach, there's probably a number of dimensions to it that are worth highlighting briefly, but it does encourage real strong collaboration across the group. So there's a lot of sustainability capability within the individual subsidiaries. And we had six members of the sustainability teams in our boardroom this morning, and I spent some time with them this morning actually working through some of the collaborative discussions that they're having at a group level to actually share perspectives and share insights and share common approaches to addressing the climate change challenges that we've all got. And we think that group approach is much more effective to avoid duplication and achieve the best outcomes. We think that's a much better approach than working individually in silos. And I think it does also recognise that group target approach. It does recognise the reality that in some cases our subsidiaries may not be able to fully eliminate all emissions, while at the same time some subsidiaries may be able to be carbon positive in time. And I think that recognition is going to come through the group work that we're doing across the CCHL team. And I think finally it's worth noting that there is a requirement under the TCFD regime, the Task Force for Climate Change Financial Disclosures, that creates reporting obligations on certain entities, including CCHL and Christchurch Airport. Not all of our subsidiaries, but CCHL and Christchurch Airport have obligations coming up in relation to TCFD reporting because we are listed issuers. And for CCHL in particular, in order to meet those reporting obligations under the TCFD reporting regime, we do need to be working together with the group because ultimately we're reporting a group position in relation to our climate change approach. And then finally, in relation to Christchurch Airport and their Central Otago proposal, I think the key message there that we've shared with you previously is that as we sit here today, we're well aware of the status of the proposal in relation to Central Otago land that's been acquired by Christchurch Airport. As we sit here today, there's no decisions to be made in relation to that project by either Christchurch Airport, CCHL or Council. There are a number of work streams underway that we've shared publicly and that the airport's shared publicly, and those work streams will play out over a period of time. And as the work streams play out, there'll be information developed that will actually address some of the comments and questions that have been asked. But as we sit here today, that information needs to be worked up so that we can actually properly respond to the questions that are rightly being asked. And so I think that's really where that project sits. So that's in the future discussion to be had, and one that will keep an active engagement around. So I think, Sam, those were the 5 key areas that I'm aware of that we've talked about over the last few weeks. But
yeah, sure.
Happy for you to open it up for any questions.
Thank you very much for that, Paul, and Alex as well. I think that's given us a really good overview to start things off. Now, so there's a council resolution there around noting it, 1, 2 and 3.
Some questions.
And there are questions, and obviously as well, but I'm just signalling that I'm keen to move that, and I know Catherine Chu will second it, so I'm just putting that out there now. And then we can have amendments in that as we want to play it out. So what we'll do first is go around with questions, and I'm keen to give everyone a fair bite of the cherry, so I don't want people to take up too much time. So we'll start with Pauline.
Thank you, and thanks for outlining those 5 important points so well. Just a devil's advocate question here. When you're looking at dealing with your emissions targets as a group approach, is there any one group that you are perhaps trying to protect? Say, for instance, if the airport was to go and do something that was going to increase their emissions, is that what you're trying to protect, or is
No,
there
no, good question, Pauline. No, we're not trying to protect anything or anybody at all. We're quite deliberately working as a group, because the whole group acknowledge, in fact, Corporate New Zealand acknowledge that they need to respond to climate change in a positive, proactive way. And the real drivers to working at a group relate to our reporting obligations, which are at a group level, but also the benefits that we can get by working at a group. You know, there were, as I say, 6 people in our boardroom this morning who've all got really strong capabilities and experience around helping corporates address climate change, and sharing those perspectives and working together is going to achieve much better outcomes than trying to solve the problems individually. So there's no one we're trying to protect at all.
And it's fair to say that currently the Christchurch Airport has got a very good rating as far as their sustainability rating goes.
Yeah, Christchurch Airport, as you're aware, was the first, or one of the first airports in the world to achieve a global certification around climate reduction, the ACI Level 4 accreditation that they achieved last year. They were first, they claimed first, but probably first equal with Dallas in relation to their climate activity or climate reduction activity, carbon reduction activity. So they are a market leader, they're a global leader, and because of that, through that recognition, there's airports around the world reaching out to them, looking to have Christchurch Airport share their experiences with other airports in relation to what they've done to positively address the climate challenges that they've got as an airport.
And just one more quickly, that if things should change in the future, because as you say, this is a very, very long-term projection, it's not going to happen anytime within the 10 years at least, and maybe way out longer. If things were to change so that it was no longer feasible or viable for CIAL to build another airport, they have enough other pots on the boil in their property portfolio to not need to go down that track, perhaps.
Yeah, correct. And look, they had to be really clear, they have not made a decision to build an airport in Central Otago.
Right, thank you.
They've made no decisions
in
that regard.
Great, thanks, Pauline. Melanie?
Following from that, you said before that, working as a group for climate change emissions, you said some subsidiaries may not be able to meet the emissions targets individually, whereas some might be in the positive. Do you have any idea which subsidiaries would be which?
Yeah, look, it's a fair question. I think Orion's a good example. The electricity industry as a whole, effectively because of the way the laws of physics work, electricity is lost as it is distributed across electricity lines, and inherently that has a carbon footprint attached to it. And the ability to solve that requires the ability to change the laws of physics. And so Orion are doing some fantastic things in relation to areas they can control, but in relation to areas they can't control, there's inherently going to be some challenges there that can't be met directly, need to be met indirectly through sequestration, offsets, and the like.
Can I ask one other question? Regarding the airport, if we were to be looking at each individual, at its emissions targets as a business, would that include emissions related to the planes that are coming in that are not obviously owned by the airport itself?
No.
Thank you.
Okay, Anne.
Kia ora and thank you. I want to thank you too for the terrific briefings and workshops that you've presented to us in terms of the living wage and the complexities that are involved with that, and also CEO remuneration. But I'm wondering, what reassurance can you give us that you're working to narrow the gap between those on the lowest wage with those being paid at the top rate?
Yeah, as I said, Anne, I think The messaging has been consistent and consistently reinforced both formally and informally. So formally through letters of expectation that we send to the subsidiaries, informally through the chair-to-chair engagement that does take place at a board level across the CCHL board and the subsidiary boards. I think the other dimension to it to highlight that needs to be acknowledged is that employment decisions are not made by CCHL. The CCHL don't employ the CEOs, CCHL don't employ the teams of people that work across the subsidiaries. They are employed by the individual subsidiaries at an operational level. So we have the opportunity to influence and take that opportunity very seriously, and are very consistent around the way we try and influence the right outcome in that regard. But we're not the decision maker per se.
I'll just add that also through the reporting regime, we're looking to get more formal reporting on the highest and lowest. So whatever you report and measure and gets reported gets a focus as well.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you. I just wanted to check at a high level if the CCHL as a group was to offset the carbon impact of the air travel, the international air travel in particular, what would be the price of that?
I honestly don't know. I'm not able to answer
Yanni,
that.
we've already heard that doesn't fall within the reporting requirements of their emissions trading.
But in terms of the wider issue for the city and the country, it's pretty significant.
I don't want to get into it, they're a commercial investment arm.
Yeah. So, I mean, my calculation, it would be about, I think it's 500,000 tonnes of carbon from the international air travel. So offsetting that, depending on the price, would be about $25 million a year, which would be pretty significant.
I haven't done the calculation, Danny, I'm sorry.
Paul, it's not a relevant question.
Okay. Can I ask, in terms of the senior executive remuneration restraint that we've put in our statements of intent and our letters of expectation for at least several years now, what restraint has been shown? Are you able to show us or explain to us what the trend has been and how we've seen any restraint?
Yeah, I think we spent some quite good time end of March, early April in a workshop around that, and we shared at that workshop some data over the last 5 years which benchmarked the CCHL Group CEO REM against a market index of CEO REM. And within that data set over the last 5 years, I don't have the data in front of me, but from memory, the CEO REM at the CCHL Group level had increased about 3% a year on average, and that was very similar to the benchmark data that we referred to in that discussion. So at a trend level, I think there's evidence that restraint is being shown, albeit it needs to be restraint within a market context.
Right, and does it concern you that in the agenda that we've got, when we look at on page 48, that when we go through both the executive remuneration and the living wage targets or areas that were asked for, that if you go through it, executive remuneration, no specific targets, no comments, no specific targets, no specific targets, no specific targets, no specific targets from our companies, and likewise with the living wage. 2 of them have no comment, 1 has TBC, and there's 1, I think, that has a stated target, and there's 2 that have a stated minimum and commitment. But does it concern you that really around executive remuneration, our companies are not setting clear enough targets to show restraint and a reduction?
Yeah, I think the point of highlighting that in the report was to highlight the fact that we are going to feed exactly that concern back to the subsidiaries and request that they do include appropriate commitments and statements within their final SOI to address those aspects.
Right, and just to be really clear, in regards to the statement of intent, as a as a key shareholder, we are able to provide feedback on the statement of intent on issues, strategic issues.
In relation to, exactly, as the shareholder, we can provide comments on the draft statement of intent.
Yep, so there'd be nothing stopping us from passing a resolution today that provided feedback on the strategic direction in regards to the airport around Terrace.
Well, the strategic direction is not set out in the statement of intent. So commercial strategy is not a statement of
Part
intent
of it.
matter. That's a matter for the company to manage at a board and management level.
I just wonder, Paul, that question you had before, could you just clarify, just for probably Yanni and the wider audience's benefit, you talked about the 75% ownership. Who is the shareholder of that? Is it CCHL or is it the council?
CCHL is the shareholder, and the Crown hold the other 25%.
Sure. Yep, thank you. Yanni, have you got more questions?
I know when we've previously discussed the living wage being applied to our contractors, one of the reasons we've been given is that it'll have a cascading impact on other businesses. But when we look at what's happening around New Zealand, we see major corporations like Westpac now and Auckland City Council now applying to the contracted cleaners and security guards the living wage. So I just was really interested to understand what the current thinking is within CCHL and its companies over how we could actually look at the living wage for our contractors, given that previously we haven't seen those developments, but in the recent 12 months we are seeing a move towards contracted cleaners, security guards and others being applied the living wage. And so any thoughts on if we wanted to get the contractors within our companies onto a living wage, what the best mechanism was to do that?
Yeah, I think commercially it's quite challenging, as you've alluded to. I think we're trying to focus, as I understand Council are, on direct employees and getting direct employees to work towards a living wage over time. The challenges with contractors we've talked about previously, and we probably don't have time today to go into it. But I wouldn't say we can never get there, but I see it as commercially quite challenging, but something we're happy to continue to focus on if we can see a way through.
Thanks.
Great. Aaron?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Just going on Yanni's point around the restraint or closing the gap is probably a better way to put it. That's a better corporate goal. Has there been work done rather than using the measurement of percentage increases, because that's what creates inequity, because 10% of an elephant's a lot more than 10% of a mouse, as we all know. So just using a dollar amount, if a company's going to say put up salaries by $50,000 this year and you've got 50 staff, that's $1,000 per person, and applying it that way rather than going, we'll do it on a percentage amount, because the ones on the bigger number to start with are going to get even more of that 50 grand than the ones at the bottom get. Is there work being done to do it that way to close the gap?
This year I think will be the first year that we've actually included within the SOI a desire to look to close the gap, and the reporting in relation to that will potentially give us a bit more visibility around how some of the thinking at a subsidiary level works. As I said in relation to Councillor Galloway's question, they're not CCHL decisions, obviously, but I think as Alex alluded to, when we start reporting, you tend to manage what you report and you measure what you manage, or you manage what you measure, I should say. By measuring that gap, we'd like to think that there'll be more active management around it.
Right, so would you be, as a group, looking to do work on other ways of doing it other than just percentage?
Look, our focus is going to be to send the signal and encourage the right outcomes. We're not in a position to actively make the decisions, so we're not necessarily going to be actively directing or trying to tell the subsidiaries how to make employment decisions. That's not our role.
Right.
But our focus is to get the visibility of the information through appropriate reporting, and then encourage the subsidiaries to manage it appropriately to strengthen the outcomes.
Right, okay, thank you.
Are there any other? Oh, Pauline? Yep.
Just a suggestion, with your permission, with the...
Can we do questions first, and then I'll come to you?
Yes, okay,
as soon as we've done
great.
that.
Yep.
Jimmy?
Questions. Back to the key questions, because our council particularly declared the climate and the ecological emergency in May of 2019. But even your subsidiary, the airport, have a kind of plan for investment in the Central Otago, those projects. but because we set up target based on our draft, the climate change is by 2030, all the council, the organization, and all the kind of subsidiary should be compliant and consistent with our criteria by the 2030. Those kind of carbon emission neutrality. But now we have this kind of investment. Even it's not in Christchurch, but it's kind of South Island, more or less, will create those carbon emission. So I just don't know whether that's consistent with our criteria or policy or declaration or not. And also how to fill the gap through the communication, between your subsidiary and all those affected community. That's a key question, is my...
Yep. So there's a couple of questions there. I think the first comment would be that any infrastructure, actually, that's developed anywhere in New Zealand in future needs to be developed within the constraints of the Carbon Zero Act. And any consenting process is going to need to properly consider the sustainability implications of new infrastructure development. And any potential development of a new airport in Central Otago would need to be developed consistent with those requirements. And there's multiple work streams underway to work through that process. And if and when we get to the point where there's decisions to be made, all of that information needs to be clearly worked through. But as we sit here today, that remains a work in progress. In relation to community engagement, there has been active community engagement in Central Otago by the airport, and we've had some discussions recently about increasing that community engagement with key stakeholder groups and community groups in Christchurch City, recognising that Christchurch is a key stakeholder in that process as well. So that's noted and acknowledged.
Great, thank you, Paul, for that. Yeah. So I think that's concluded. Oh, you got any questions, Mike? You're okay?
No, he's answered it.
Oh, yeah, perfect. You're good. Okay, so we'll close off those. Pauline, do you want to just make your suggestion?
It's small, but in the number 3, the second to last line, such as future costs and the effect on council's commitment to climate change targets. I was wondering if it might be better to say such as future costs and something like the interface with the council's commitment, or the synergy with the.
Well,
so it's kind of like more like
it's
got to fit.
Yeah, no, great suggestion. I'm sure, Catherine, you're happy with that. Can we just change that, Joe? Well, yeah, thanks, Pauline. That's great. So we've got a mover and seconder for that, but what we'll do is we'll just wait for Joe. Can you scroll up? So Yanni's got 3. I just want to check with you, Yanni. Given the answers, I mean, a couple of them don't seem actually relevant now. Are you still wanting to put them, or even after the explanation that's already in the SOIs? Okay, all right, that's okay. Do you want? So have you got a seconder for those?
Yes, I wanted to move them separately. So
all 3 of them separately, or the first 2?
Yeah.
All 3 separately.
Yeah.
Can we do that, Joe?
With the agreement of you as the chairs.
Yeah. Yeah.
There needs to be a seconder for it.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. So split them up. Yeah. I mean, I thought we'd covered them off, but if Yanni wants to take up time, that's fine. So for A, have you got a seconder for that? Would someone like to second A?
I'll second it.
Melanie will. Okay. For B, Jake will second B. Oh, yeah, sure. And for C, does he have a seconder for C?
I'll second it.
Melanie will second that as well. Okay. So, Joe, the question's been asked: Can someone put more than one amendment?
I believe it's one amendment with those 3 motions, and if you want to put the 3 motions separately, there's nothing in standing orders that is against.
Right. Okay. So
it's one amendment. You're just putting each part of it.
What I'd be keen to do, though, Yanni, and I hope you'll
just speak to them as a group.
Indulge me on that.
Yeah.
Is just one debate rather
Yeah,
than...
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
The idea was that there'll be some people that don't want to support all three or just one or two of the three. So
But you could have done that. Oh,
yeah.
anyway.
Cool.
So, I thought you'd been here a long time. Okay, and then, so if we can do those, if we can put those three in. Yeah. And can we just have it clear who's moving and seconding? Well, obviously Yanni's moving, but who's seconding them? Thanks, Joe. We'll just wait while that's done. I just want to get it right.
Just Melanie, Jake, Melanie.
Missed that. Yeah. Hopefully someone seconds it.
I think we're nearly there, aren't we? So, can Melanie and Jake just check that you're comfortable with those, seconding those? You still happy, Melanie? Yep. No, I just want to make sure they're the right ones, so you're not... Yeah,
Excuse me, Mr Chair, if Councillor Coker seconds them, she's not able to move a further amendment.
Okay, so what would you like to do, Melanie? So you'll withdraw that? Yeah, so we'll just withdraw that last amendment. Thanks, Joe. Okay, so what we'll do is...
Which one are you withdrawing, sorry?
So stop for a sec, everyone. Mike's called a point of order.
Could we just check? I'm pretty sure that I understand what Yanni's trying to do by having them voted separately, but it has to be one amendment, so therefore it should just be one seconder with that, not two different seconders.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think there probably is correct, yes. Putting them separately is okay, but with the different...
Right, so you actually need you need Melanie to second all three. So you happy to do that? Jake, you happy to? Okay. Thanks, Mike. That's cool. See, Yanni, this would have all been resolved if we didn't put them separately. Okay. Good to go? Excellent. Okay, so what we'll do now, thank you, Paul and Alex, very much for your time and for coming in. I think it's actually been really useful, not only for us, but I think the wider audience watching as well, just to explain what you're doing. So now we'll move into debate. Joe, can you put the timer up, please? Right, so Yanni, I assume you want to start?
Thank you.
Well, I'd be keen to do the whole, I mean, I'd much rather debate the whole thing at once and then we'll just put it to a vote and see where it lands, rather than relitigating it time and time again.
Yeah, cool.
So this is debate on everything.
Yeah, so just to speak in favour of these amendments, just had the email response back from the staff that the CCHL Group CEO remuneration has increased 3.3% per annum over the last 5 years in comparison to the NZ Herald CEO pay survey. CEO remuneration for CEOs at the top of NZX listed companies increased 3.1%. These are public companies owned by the public, and the senior executive remuneration has gotten out of control. We need to take a stronger stand than what we've currently been doing, and I think it's incredibly disappointing to just consistently be told it's a matter for the companies, and that we need to pay people higher and higher to attract the talent necessary. We really need to take a strong stand on senior executive remuneration. People are being paid a huge amount of money compared to what the ordinary person earns in our society, and it's time that we addressed it.
And I don't think you can address senior executive remuneration with the increase without considering what it means for the people at the bottom. Some of the people that have worked the hardest during the COVID-19 response have been security guards and cleaners. It is outrageous that those people, for some of our companies, are still not on a living wage. And all this is doing is asking, as part of the feedback, that it be considered both implementing the living wage within the next 12 months for direct employees and within 24 months for contractors. So this is feedback to a statement of intent. This is not directing the companies to do certain things. We cannot do that, and I understand that this is the process that we have. So I strongly urge you to support this. We are seeing a pattern around the world and around New Zealand of contracted people now being paid the living wage. Let us be at the front of that movement rather than at the end of it. It's only a matter of time before it happens, and I'd rather we, as the People's Republic of Christchurch, be a leader rather than a follower. And finally, I just want to touch on, again, giving feedback and raising concern at the strategic direction of CAL's proposal to build an airport at Terrace in both regards to cost and the climate change impacts. If you look at the CCHL statement of intent, it sets an objective that the group companies attain environmental, social and innovative performance objectives that are compatible with activities, commercial nature and other objectives. There's everything in the statement of intent to suggest that this is entirely appropriate that we raise concern if we have concerns about what's proposed at this stage of the process. I just want to touch on a few issues as I see them in regards to Terrace and the airport. We can talk about all the awards that the airport's won in terms of sustainability. Go and look at what's happened on their campus. Look at the McDonald's, look at the KFC, look at the overseas companies, the supermarket and the Bunnings. To me, that's not sustainability, not using local businesses, not using locally owned companies, developing a huge campus that, yes, it brings in revenue, but what is the cost locally? What is the impact locally? We know New Zealand has one of the highest rates of fast food outlets per capita in the world, and we also know we've got major obesity issues facing us, and we've also got major sustainability issues in terms of the way in which our food is produced. So I think we need to look at that and say that really we should be concerned about the proposal to build a massive new airport in the middle of central Otago, that there will be environmental impacts associated with it, especially when we've declared a climate change emergency. That's just putting aside the cost, and to be told that it hasn't cost the ratepayer anything of the city when we've got a huge amount of money being expended and are looking to still fix our broken roads and our water pipes following the earthquake, I think is the wrong priority. So I want to raise that concern today. I want to send a clear message to CCHL that there are serious concerns about the cost implications of the proposal of the airport at Terrace, and there are serious concerns about the impact on our climate change and sustainability. And as I said, I did a rough calculation based on the 500,000 tonnes of carbon being used for international travel, and to offset that, depending on the price, comes out to about $25 million per year. That is a massive cost to offset our carbon footprint, and it's not one I'm prepared to support.
Would anyone else like to speak? Jake?
Yeah, I'll speak to the living wage element of this, which is to say that, of course, I'll be supporting this amendment. The council has spent years talking about implementing a living wage, but has thus far failed to actually do so. Sure, letters of expectation are the main way we direct our companies to implement our wishes, but we should. There's no reason we can't direct them via a comment in the statement of intent as well. So we need to be clear in whatever document that comes before us that we want a living wage and in what time frame our companies will need to implement it. Otherwise, it simply won't happen. The companies and the directors rightly have purely commercial aims, and it's our job to focus them on the triple bottom line. I guess kind of finishing where I started in terms of how long this has taken, simply talking about a living wage is just virtue signalling and actually paying it is making people's lives better.
Thanks, Jake. Would anyone else like to speak? Pauline?
Yes, just briefly. Look, Yes, I do. I do support setting targets. They're always good to have. So I'll support A. With B, I support CCHL considering these things that Yanni's requesting. So that's a good thing to do. We've already been told of the challenges of this, but I think further consideration is never harmful. With C, I'm a little bit torn with this one because I think we've basically addressed that in our number 3 resolution. I feel comfortable with that. There's so much unknown about this, and we have declared a climate emergency, and we all agree with that. But the unknown with this is just we're just floundering around. We don't know what the intention is. We don't know what the future will bring. We don't even know if this project will go ahead. At the moment, we've got land acquisition. That's it. So I think we've got that covered on an expectation with climate change interface in number 3. So I won't be supporting C.
Yeah, look, thank you. I won't be supporting A. I think the decision to the boards, if we see extremely good management right at the top and what that can earn and save, I think that's a matter for the boards, and hopefully they will make the right decisions and they will pay better dividends on the good leadership. B, we had a presentation as councillors with regards to one of the companies. I thought that was excellent and how that's managed by that company and how that's going forward. So again, I think we'll leave, if the companies can work together as a family with regards to climate change, I think that is another way that these companies can work together to get leadership and look at the ways that you can get that equal and improved wages. So there's more than one way to skin a cat, and I know that from personal experience in my previous life. C, I will support C. I think it's just such a grey area, but I do think the government needs to show leadership in this and give direction to TAs and private, etc. It seems ridiculous that a government can have a look at climate issues and not show leadership with regards to that. Thank you.
Me.
Yeah, I support those amendment, particularly regarding the A. We can see those table, regarding to the CCHL subsidiary in response to all the letter of the expectation. Looks like not any kind of subsidiary have set up specific figure regarding to the executive remuneration. I think should be, can set up those kind of target, give us, we play the governance so we can review them more clearly, then it's kind of commitment. Second one is long-term issue regarding to the living wage, particularly in Christchurch. We have suffering several times, those disasters we can see over the past 10 years, So those kind of the low salary or low income, those kind of staff, they couldn't afford to look after their family and their kids, etc. So this one should be reasonable, particularly here. Still some of the subsidiary, I didn't see that they mentioned it's a TBC or no comments, etc. Last one is third one is particularly my concern, because at the moment it's still a long way to go. It's uncertainty, because still need to go through those land purchase, those validation, the planning, or consent and the construction. So lots of the uncertainty. So there's a bigger gap between the CCH or airport and also the affected community. How to the narrow those the gap. That's very important, crucial. We are all councillors, we should take a lead, to raise these issues. So I think this amendment 3, let's concern those the climate change, concern those the cost, whether it's reasonable. Particularly, we review all the community outcome. That's quite balanced. Social, cultural, economic, environment balance is not a focus on the economic only, etc. So I would like to support those amendments.
Thank you, Jimmy. Is it Aaron?
Yeah, at first glance, I was quite keen on supporting a couple of these, but reading the words closely, it gives me caution to vote in favour, because A has reducing senior level remuneration, not just holding or catching the others up. So reducing could potentially have the effects of causing a brain drain, where people would leave either this city or leave our country to go to other places for senior level jobs, which can have an impact. So if it was purely holding or catching up, I could have been supportive of. So that's slightly dangerous wording. Number B, I fully support the living wage aspect, but then trying to get the contractors to do it as well is quite hard, and it might go against your point of sustainability, because a contractor might just subcontract out some of their work to overseas workers, where you've got no control at all what they are delivering, and then just feed that back and through their contractor here. So undoing the sustainability part that you speak of or after here, Yanni. And then the third one around the Terrace Airport, I struggle with that one as well, because the wording again is proposed to build the airport in regard to the cost and climate change. We've had 3 really, really clear briefings that have shown us how, if that project goes ahead, according to what they're currently planning, it would have a clear reduction of carbon for New Zealand Inc. And one of the things that needs to be done for New Zealand is to think collectively, how do we reduce carbon, how do we locally reduce carbon, and if the Terrace Airport does deliver that, which the points that Pauline made may deliver, we don't know yet, but if it does, that would be the best way to go, is to reduce New Zealand total, not just kind of think, oh, you don't want it down there because it's an airport, because air travel will be here to stay, air freight will be here to stay, it will change, and the way that we fuel aircraft and all other transport around the world will change. In fact, that's where we should be putting our energy and our investment, is in what are those changes and how do we get there a lot quicker than still using carbon.
Melanie?
I was trying to think about what I wanted to talk about. Regarding the airport, I think that the airport's done actually a brilliant job within itself to reduce emissions, and it's obviously the concern of everybody about the emissions of the planes that are coming in that we can't control, but we can think about what airports that we are building into the future. So that's all I'll comment there. On the remuneration, I understand the difficulty around paying contractors and the different types of businesses that we have and the competition we have across the country, but we could take a leading step towards a living wage there and actually put a firm line. I also think with senior remuneration, if we're paying high wages for people to do a good job, I would hope that those people would be doing a good job because they feel that that's the right thing to do, not because they're getting paid a high wage. So I think asking people to reduce that is actually a very good idea, and so I wholeheartedly support it.
Anne?
Kia ora. So as a council, we talk an awful lot about equity, and I think that the A and B here is putting heat on really just walking the talk. So we need to be sure that our council-owned organisations are doing everything they can to bring equity into this situation. We're talking about a living wage. We're talking about what people need to live on in a relatively comfortable way. And so I'm very supportive of A and B. I think I agree with Pauline and her views on C. I think that we've been given clear information about this situation, and I don't think that what is being verbalised there or written there is actually helpful at this point. So I won't be supporting that.
Thank you. And James? Oh, sorry. Oh, cool. Yeah, Mike.
First of all, I asked a couple of questions at the last meeting, and I'd like to thank Paul and Alex for answering them really, really well. And so I'll just focus, I guess, on Terrace. And I share the concerns raised about Terrace increasing aviation capacity and therefore emissions. However, if Terrace happens, it's probably going to be in a decarbonised environment, and potentially it may be better to have large groups of people flying into Central Otago instead of actually having individuals driving there by car. And we actually don't have enough information to make that kind of call today. But actually, I believe we actually have an opportunity to have meaningful impact through our next letter of expectation, where actually we can be more direct and be clear that our companies do not invest in projects that increase New Zealand's carbon emissions. I don't think today is actually the right time to be doing this. We need to do it actually through the proper process, and that's letters of expectations.
Kia ora, you just stole some of my thunder, but as colleagues around the chamber would know, that I'm very strong on the notion and the fact that we, as representatives, are the ultimate shareholders, as a body, as ultimate shareholder of CCHL. And I also note that 4 of our colleagues are on the board of CCHL, and I've stepped back for the moment. And I appreciate that one of the independent directors, Alex, has come today for this decision. And also the fact that we've had a lot of time, briefings where we've discussed and argued some of our points that we're talking about today. And we come to this point where we've appointed this board, 4 of our colleagues are on it, and I'm prepared to give them and rely on their responsibilities as a board to respond to our letter of expectation in an appropriate fashion. And I think that we've thrashed enough things out that we're at this point today where I'm comfortable with what you've put before us. One thing that I want to make a very strong point on, because there are people here today unhappy with the Terrace proposal. Thank you for making the point that today's not the day that we're going to make a decision. There's a long way to go, a long runway to go, if you like, before that decision is going to be made. I think it is important that those people who are opposed to the concept or the idea of another airport down that way, I think it's important that they have the ability to express their views, and they are today. One other thing is that the point's been made in briefings that sometime in the next 20 to 30 years, someone is going to build an airport there. And we've got to have a good think about whether we want it to be us, because we will miss out on some of the economic outcomes as well. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you, and I'll just close it off very, very briefly. Look, these are always difficult situations, I think, because the nature of some of these amendments do inflame a certain narrative. And don't worry, I've been guilty of doing amendments like this myself in the past. But the reality is, I think we need to be very clear on why we're here today. It is not to decide whether or not we're building an airport in Terrace. And I think James and Mike have made that point really, really clearly. We're here setting direction from the council to our council and organisation. There's quite rightly a political buffer that sits within that so that they can derive a good value while balancing the social good in the city. I think they achieve that very, very well. And looking at these amendments, I think they don't necessarily capture what's already in the statement of intent. So I am slightly concerned at that approach. I think, if we were to go down this path of being very specific, very deliberate, we could be at risk of being called the Kremlin. And I say that because we genuinely have good people outside of this organisation in the commercial world who can make these calls. We're not making a decision today on Terrace, and it's unfortunate that the debate has become about that. I think everyone acknowledges that climate change is an issue that is being worked through. The point has been made in briefings time and time again. We've had workshop after workshop after workshop on it. Any development that occurs in this space will have to comply with the legislation of the government. And so I just don't buy the narrative, quite frankly, that we can sit here today and effectively try and erode the value in one of our companies. I think it would be really disheartening to send a signal like this. So I think that the original resolution with point 3, acknowledging the need to keep us in the loop as these things are worked through, we'll send a really good signal to the city that we're aware of the issues and we'll work through them in time. I think probably the other good thing, and I know the Mayor and the Chief Executive have talked about it offline as well, is the need to better communicate with the ratepayers of Christchurch. And I think if we can do that, not only with Terrace, but our entire operation, people will be more fully informed and I think more understand where we're coming from. So it's really unfortunate that this has become a beat up over Terrace today. That's not what this item is about in the slightest. It's about setting the direction for our parent company, or for our group company that looks after a group of subsidiaries. And I think it would be really dangerous today if, like I say, we became like the Kremlin where we dictated everything. We can send a signal. A lot of it's already been captured. And so I'd really hope that people wouldn't support the amendments but accept the fact that we've done the groundwork already and a lot of this stuff is already in motion. So with that, I'll close the debate and we'll put the amendments first, one by one. I think we're probably, what's going to be easier is, Joe, if you don't mind, just do a division on each one. Yeah. So we'll put A first.
Councillor McDonald?
No.
Councillor Johansson?
Yes.
Councillor Galloway?
Yes.
Councillor Daniels?
No.
Councillor Coker? Yes. Councillor Chen?
Yes.
Councillor Scandrich?
No.
Councillor Kewen?
No.
Councillor Davidson?
No.
Councillor Cotter? Yes. Councillor Chu? No.
About what you'd expect.
So it's tied, so the motion is not carried.
Okay, so that motion's not carried. If you can go to B, please.
Councillor McLaren?
Yes.
Councillor McDonald?
No.
Councillor Johansson?
Yes.
Councillor Galloway?
Yes.
Councillor Daniels?
No.
Councillor Coker? Yes. Councillor Chen?
Yes.
Councillor Scandrich?
No.
Councillor Kewen?
Go on. Go on.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Can you go to C, please?
Councillor McLaren?
No.
Councillor McDonald?
No.
Councillor Johansson?
Yes.
Councillor Galloway?
No.
Yes.
Eight. The motion is lost.
Great, that motion's lost. Okay, so can we go to the substantive? Yeah. Obviously acknowledging B carried, didn't it? Now on that, Joe, can you just clarify, we wouldn't put 4 separately again, would we?
No.
No, so it's just, we'll just vote on the... Yeah, I would like to put 4 separately. So. Again, actually, I will. Can I put 4 separately?
If it becomes a substantive motion, so yes, with the same principle.
Yep, okay. All right, so, yeah, I mean, we don't need to go through the whole thing, but if we'll put 1 to 3, all in favour? Against? That's carried. Item 4, all in Item 4, all in favour? Against? No. Can we just have them recorded? So I don't know. So yeah, so it's only literally Catherine, myself, and Tim. Yeah. Okay, that motion is that motion's carried. Excellent. Hey, thank you very much, Paul and Alex, for coming in. I do appreciate that. And Leanne, you're back in the chair.
All right, everyone, if people could take their seats and we'll get the meeting continuing. We'll move on to item 13, the Hearings Panel report to the Council on the City Mall and Oxford Terrace access changes, and the chair of that committee was Anne Galloway.
Thank you. Tēnā koutou katoa. It's my pleasure to present the Hearings Panel recommendations following the consultations and hearings process on the City Mall and Oxford Terrace changes. Councillor James Daniels and I were appointed to the panel. Councillor Sam McDonald was also appointed but was unable to attend due to ill health. I was elected chair. We met on Thursday the 18th of March at 9:30am in Chambers. Council officers presented their report and responded to questions from the panel. The panel's questions and staff responses can be read in Attachment A of the report. As you can read in the report, CCC staff began discussions to change City Mall into a shared zone in October 2020, proposing a 10 kilometre speed limit for all vehicles and to limit access time for goods vehicles making deliveries. Council considered a report on these proposals on the 10th of December 2020 and approved consultation. Consultation opened on the 18th of January this year and closed 18th of February of the same year. More than 180 leaflets were delivered to businesses potentially affected by the changes. Others were posted to 44 property owners and sent to libraries. Info was also emailed to 195 stakeholders, including the businesses, advocacy groups and residents groups around the city centre. 179 submitters provided feedback. 105 were in support, 59 opposed, 15 did not indicate a preference or had mixed preferences. You will have read the analysis of the views on changing City Mall from a pedestrian mall to a shared zone on pages 156 to 157 of the report. Views on limiting the access of goods vehicles to between 5am to 10am daily were contained in points 4.18 through to 4.23. It is important to note that as a result of feedback from the CCBA and individual businesses, that the project team is recommending that goods vehicles can access Oxford Terrace from 4 to 5pm daily, as well as 5am to 10am. So they listened to the feedback and they responded. The panel heard submissions from Anthony Goff on behalf of the Terrace Limited, Annabelle Turley on behalf of the Unichem Chemist, James Gong on behalf of Mimiso South Island Limited, Paul Lonsdale on behalf of CCBA, and Paul Bonini on behalf of Westpac Central City. The key issues raised by the submitters and which the panel deliberated on are noted in points 6.2 to 6.18 on pages 159 to 160. As a result of the deliberations, the hearings panel agreed to recommend to the Council to approve the proposal to change the legal status of City Mall from a pedestrian mall to a shared zone, and to further limit the use by motor vehicles for this proposed shared zone, along with the changes to the existing shared zone of Oxford Terrace as per the recommendations. Additionally, in response to concerns about pedestrian safety and the importance of prioritising pedestrians in this new shared zone, the panel added recommendation 12, which is to request staff to install signage to promote appropriate user behaviour to ensure pedestrian safety in the proposed shared zone. And 13, additionally, the panel requested that staff monitor the effects of the proposed afternoon delivery time and to report back to the Urban Development and Transport Committee after 12 months of operation. In conclusion, I would like to thank the staff for the comprehensive report and work leading up to this, and to invite Stephen Thomas and the team to the table to answer any questions from fellow councillors. Ngā mihi nui.
Kia ora, thank you very much. Now I presume you're going to move that. you're moving the recommendations.
Moving the
and
recommendation.
James is seconding those. So are there any questions? Pauline, Tim.
Thank you. Thanks for an excellent report, Councillor Galloway. Just on the request in number 12 and the recommendation requesting additional signage, what will that say? What does it look like? And I'm just concerned that there are a lot of signs in the central city now.
Yeah, so we've still got to work through that, but we are conscious of the fact that we don't want to have too many signage and too much street clutter down there as well, because obviously it's one of our premier spaces. So that'll be part of the consideration of how we design those signs and what signs we can use.
Okay, so unknown as yet,
yeah.
But you're aware of what I'm talking about.
Yeah, correct.
I've got Tim and then Yanni.
So we have issues with some of our bylaws with regards to be able to enforce them. So with regards to the speed limit, whose responsibility is to enforce it, and how will you do it? Because it seems perhaps it may be after the fact, because it's been a while since I've seen a police car down there kind of thing.
Yeah, so most, just about all the moving vehicle violations are for the police to enforce. The only ones that we have delegation to do is bus lane enforcement, so it's for the police to enforce them. Part of it's around getting the design right, I suppose, in this situation. We believe that the design does lend to the proposed speed limit of 10 kilometres an hour. I think you're probably very aware of the environment and the number of people moving through there and the tram going through there. All that sort of limits the operating speeds to the 10k speed limit.
Thank you.
Yanni?
Thanks. I was just interested to read that in terms of the feedback around people that were concerned, just in 4.8, and 4.9, more than half the 59 submitters who did not support the shared zone were opposed to cyclists in the mall because of risk to pedestrians, particularly those who had a disability. So I just wanted to understand what disability barrier-free assessment have we done on this proposed changes, given that that's been a concern that's been expressed.
I think in essence what we're going to be doing by changing the city mall to a shared zone is actually formalising what's occurring currently. As most people probably know, people do cycle through there at the moment, even though legally they shouldn't be. What we're certainly not doing is necessarily promoting it as a cycle route. It's not really a direct link to and from anywhere for cyclists. There's much better and more efficient routes for people to cycle to. If people do cycle through there, they're normally cycling through there as a destination to go to a shop or to go to a premises in that area. So we're not envisaging that there's going to be many more cyclists using the area.
But we've just built a cycleway on Hereford Street, haven't we?
Yep.
Right. So a cycle lane, sorry. Yep. We painted a line, yeah. And we built one on Chewham Street and St Asaph Street. So, I mean, I guess I'm just really concerned. Like, we've had the disability forum, and this was an issue that's raised. So is there anything that we can do to try and improve and enhance the safety of people with disabilities who use this space?
So I think that was one of the things that the hearings panel also raised, and as a result of that, that's why they have their recommendation, I think it was number 12, was around the additional signage, and part of that signage will be, I guess, education to make sure that people understand that pedestrians do have priority in a shared space. As part of this, we're not proposing any major infrastructural changes to City Mall. It sort of is what it is. We think that it lends well to slow speeds, so and does encourage pedestrians to use the area. And yeah, so this is just effectively changing the.
Just the second question I had was in regards to 417.17. People generally supported the installation of bollards, which would restrict motor vehicles in city malls. Several said bollards were needed at other access points to stop vehicles entering the mall. Has there been any consideration given to the bollards? I think some of the feedback was concerned around Hereford Street, where we are proposing to put the anti-terror bollards. Is that the bollards that are going to? Yeah,
so I mean, I guess this project's more about getting the restrictions right for Oxford Terrace and City Mall. rather than how they would be enforced. We've just concentrated really as part of this project to get the times right and to get the right type of designation, probably not quite the right word, but the right type of, change it to shared zone effectively.
Right, but in terms of, and I don't know if you've been down there at night, on a Friday and Saturday night, if you see what's happening with taxis and Ubers, and a lot of people just parking in the laneway, is there any other sort of measures, physical measures that you're thinking of to control traffic?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's my understanding that that's one of the ideas behind the Bollard project. In addition to that, we've also, as part of the Hereford Street works, we've installed some parking enforcement cameras to be able to try and change some of the behaviour that occurs down there at night time. A lot of that's around taxi drivers and Uber drivers and other people picking up and dropping off, creating that sort of potentially an unsafe environment. So we do a bit of nighttime enforcement down there in association with the police, but we're looking to use these cameras to do that nighttime enforcement to try and change the behaviour.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. I'll open it up for debate. Yanni?
I understand the intent of formalising it, but I am really concerned. I just don't agree that we should be allowing everything to go through City Mall, and I'm particularly concerned around cyclists going through it, especially when we've invested in cycle lanes and cycleways on parallel streets. So I just can't really understand why we'd create the risk without enforcement that a shared space, particularly for people who are disabled or visually impaired or pedestrians. So I guess I have a lot of sympathy for the concerns that people have raised, so I'm not supportive of doing this. I just think we're going to create a risk, and it's not one that I'm prepared to take.
Sarah and then Tim.
Thanks for that, and thanks for all the work on this. I know that there is some concern, and I think that the monitoring will be really helpful, and I look forward to getting that monitoring report back. My feeling is that will be unfounded, and that the perception and the fear that this is going to cause harm won't come into reality. The reality is that in any time where there's lots of pedestrians in City Mall, it's a really unattractive place to bike. There isn't a lot of space, and the tram tracks are there. And I know that through the middle of the tram tracks is the key place that cyclists do bike, and that tends to be first thing in the morning. But there's not a lot of them, and people will prefer to go to other routes unless they're actually going to the shops in City Mall. And we know that there's always lots of bikes parked in that area. The bike racks are almost always full, which is great. But I don't think that the fears are going to turn into reality. There won't be a big influx of cyclists because actually people had no idea that they weren't allowed to bike there right now. So anyone who is likely to bike there is probably already doing it. And there has been no enforcement. We haven't had any reports of incidents, and I think it's going to be fine. But I'm looking forward to getting that monitoring report in a year's time. Thanks.
Tim?
Sarah said a couple of things that were on my mind with regards to cyclists are going through there anyway, and I'm yet to see someone kind of pinged with a ticket. So the positive of this is that we are actually going to put some 10K signs up. Whether they look at them or not, it's irrelevant, because we're actually going to set a standard, which I think is important. The odds of ever actually pinging someone for breaking the 10Ks is probably zero, because they're going faster than you can run. So, but I do think the principle of actually setting a speed is important. We have forever and a day we have had problems at times with delivery vehicles. I am surprised that the last point on number 11 is with regards to delivery or goods vehicles being able any day to do go in there between 4 p.m. and 5 p.m. If you look at a Friday or a Thursday, they're actually really busy times for pedestrians when they're going to the market or whatever, or bars, etc. So I'm surprised about that time, and that wasn't picked up. So that's an oddity, I think, that perhaps may have been missed or may have to be reviewed in the future. I will support this, but I just am surprised at that 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. 7 days a week. But apart from that, I will support it, because I do think that we just need to put some structure in there, even though we've spent a hell of a lot of money with regards to the bollards, or looking at the bollards and the trams there anyway.
Aaron?
Yeah, I just I do support this. I just wanted to comment on the point raised about people. Thanks, Jay. About people cycling in there. I'll go against what Sarah said, and I'm surprised she said not many people will be cycling through there. So I think they should be. I think lots should be, because if you go in the evening, biking around inner city Christchurch early evening is one of the greatest things in the world you can do. It's a stunning city at that time of night. It's quite still often, and I've been in there and gone through with my children and stuff, and I encourage everyone else here to do it. And if you're a bit of a naysayer or never been on a bike, yes, you can have my children and Jake's, once we find them. I'm more than happy to take anyone from around this table for a ride through town, because cycling can be fun. I've got a couple of cool cruiser bikes, and just meandering through that city, and that city mall there should become an attraction. Don't do it fast.
I only
but
said when there was lots of people around.
Yeah, when there's lots of people around. But yeah, I had to pull you up because you said there wouldn't be many people, and I never thought I'd hear you say those words, Sarah. So just wanted to defensive.
Yes, I think there's no need for exchange in the middle of a debate. Thank you for the intervention of the bell. So I've got it's been moved and seconded. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Then that was Yanni voting no. Thank you. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the hearings panel report to the council on the proposed new mountain bike park in Montgomery Spur Reserve, and this is not about the track, it's about the process. So who chaired this one? Pauline Cotter.
All right, so the Montgomery Spur Management Plan. The hearings panel convened to consider the approval to alter the management plan of the reserve to allow an additional mountain bike track to be constructed. So that's all our scope was altering the management plan to allow this. The panel's recommendation will need to be also approved by the Minister of Conservation. The Montgomery Spur Management Plan was originally approved in 2010, and at that time it was Montgomery Spur was pronounced an outstanding natural landscape. So it's now protected from housing development, so it can be enjoyed by all. If the management plan alteration is approved today, it will allow the new mountain bike track to go ahead. Noting the Kowhai walking track has previously been approved. It's not yet built, but has been approved, so wasn't in the scope of the hearings panel. And that will enable both of these to be constructed at the same time, these tracks. So with the 303 submissions, there were 2 drop-in sessions, and 6 submitters were heard by the panel. And of the 303, there were only 3 opposed. But there were a number of comments concerned with safety issues, which were not part of the scope of the panel, but that's why we have put a noting report in there. The issues included bike speeds, conflicts between users, parking, issues on Centaurus Road, disability access, and various others. So the panel made a note of these, and also that they were out of scope for our deliberations. But we also noted that a new track will require a resource consent due to a rockfall zone, and that also construction and design will undergo thorough development planning, which will include robust safety requirements. So also, as a result of a hearing submitters' safety concerns, even with the current tracks as they're operating now, staff advised they have taken these comments into consideration and have developed measures to address concerns. The panel noted a new track will actually remove more bike traffic off existing tracks, and so too with Kowhai walking track. Other concerns about roading, parking, access, etc. will best be addressed by the two community boards, the Waikura and the Waihoru, both of whom supported the proposal, by the way. And I'd just like to make people aware that construction will be a collaborative project with the club members from local mountain bike clubs, our rangers, community volunteers and construction teams all working together to chip in and build these two tracks. So that's just absolutely fantastic. So I'd like to thank the 303 submitters and the panel members, Jake McClellan and Callum Stewart Ward, and the community boards for their support and for taking such an interest in the Montgomery Spur. And I just reminded councillors again today that the panel's decision to recommend to alter the management plan to allow a new mountain bike track to be constructed is the basis of this recommendation today. So I'd like to move that.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Jake, would you like to second it? Thank you. Any questions? Any discussion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you very much, Pauline. That's excellent work. The next item on the agenda is the hearings panel report to the council on the Colombo Street cycle route connection. And Councillor Mike Davidson, if I could invite you to present that.
Firstly, I'd just like to acknowledge Pauline and Anne's very detailed introduction to their reports. And I'd like to take my report as read. I will just acknowledge Jimmy and Catherine who sat on the hearings panel with myself. It was actually a very good hearings panel. There was a few changes made to it, which is all within the report, and the decision, our recommendation was unanimous. Happy to move it to.
Thank you. Sorry, Catherine's happy to second it? Yeah, thank you. Sorry, were there any questions? Aaron and then Pauline.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. One was around the change made around the request around the timing at Beeley Ave. Where did that come from, and why was there an opt for a change? So I've gone through a lot of times and I've not seen people not be able to get through because of the timing. And I know that it affects traffic on Beeley Ave, so...
You know,
perhaps we could have staff at the table too for this one, as that we're up to the Colombo Street. Yep, thank you.
Oh, if it's his last one, I've got heaps of questions.
Yeah, so I mean, if you're happy to answer it, then that's fine. But if it's a question for staff, then that's fine too.
Well, I think one of the key things is it's an investigation. So there were a number of submitters that were concerned with the length of the crossing time that they got, and they just made them very uncomfortable and nervous, but that changed quite quickly. So it's just investigating the crossing times, because obviously any change does have a wider network effect. So we just wanted to have a look to make sure that it is actually suitable for what we're trying to achieve.
Okay, and then the next one is on the detailed design up on the bridge. I thought we'd originally signed off 3 disability car parks there, you know, on the left-hand side for using the town hall, but this new plan has 1 each side, and I think there might be an answer to it, but
I'll get staff to answer. There's 3. Yeah. There's 2 on one side, 1 on the other, but staff can answer if there was.
So we do have 3 parks there, and it's come down to what space is available. Yep. So one of those parks is for vehicles that require a lot more space, where you've got to get wheelchairs in and out, and having from the rear as well as side of the parking space. The other 2 on the town hall side are the smaller, for people that don't have those needs as much. And it really has come down to how much space we've got available and being able to fit everything in safely. So that's why it's changed to what it is.
Okay, brilliant. And I thought that was the case, but I thought it's just to raise it here. And then the final one is, how many metered car parks are removed in the plan? Counted, was it half a dozen?
Did you want to speak to that, Mike, about how
While they're working out the answer to that, there was a concern from some businesses around the loss of the parking by their businesses. So one of the things that we asked was actually, because there's a lot of, I guess, unlimited time parking around that area. So we said, well, what we'll do is we'll actually look at those unrestricted time parks and actually move some of the restricted times park there to try and ensure that actually they had those turnover parks available for the businesses.
Yeah, I saw that. That made sense. Yeah. So how many metered ones?
There's actually no change to the number of metered parks in between Billy and Kilmore Street. It's just down between Kilmore Street down to the bridge. There was some metered parking that was there that's been taken out because there's a desire not to try and restrict, make people pay for the time restricted parking in that section.
So how many metered ones come out down there? Was it 6, 5?
I think it's about 6, yeah.
Yeah.
I can confirm that if you like.
Okay, only because the question I ask, and it's not just on this report, it's on every single time we do any of these, is we don't have financial implications in the report of taking out metered car parks. So the loss of income, we have the cost of the project, but we don't factor that in, and I don't think that's right. We should factor it in.
It is possible to do an amendment that every time we remove a metered car park, we replace another one that isn't metered with a metered one, if you'd like.
Oh, I like that. I'll take that. Yeah.
It's kind of like the tree policy.
Yeah. So we just get a bit of creep, but we move it to where it's needed. Because okay, that makes sense. Well, Mike's going to add that, I think.
I think it probably is going to fall under the. Sorry, I'm going off topic now, but it'll fall underneath the parking policy, Central City parking policy.
Which we can review.
Yeah, and finally, one last question. Given that this is a temporary, well, the longest temporary I think I've seen since I've been here, but it's a temporary 10-year program, why was it not given the treatment like the Ferry Road treatment? You know, the new bit up, the tactical urbanism thing.
So the Ferry Road project has been done under the Innovating Streets program of work, which is 90% funded by Waka Kotahi, and that is really cool. This project's been going for, 2 or 3 years already, just trying to get a design together that meets all the needs of what we're trying to achieve. And so it hasn't actually been subject to those same sort of processes. It's actually been quite lengthy, and it's more of a typical council project, if I could say it that way. So it's actually followed our normal kind of council process. The Ferry Road project has actually followed quite an innovative and quite time-constrained process, so it's actually going to be really interesting for us, and we want to do a bit of an evaluation on the time and cost spent between the two. So it's actually been quite useful having the two projects happen at the moment. So that's helpful.
That will be very helpful to see that.
Pauline.
Thanks. It's also on the similar area to Aaron's on page 277. If you're cycling down Colombo Street going south, then you cross over the Kilmore intersection. From that point to the pedestrian and cycle crossing into Victoria Square is a real pinch point, and I'm quite surprised to see you put the cyclists on the road, and I wondered why you didn't put them onto the big wide footpath. Because for me personally, I'm more comfortable cycling on the footpath there.
Yeah, that's something that was considered, and we're aware of that constraint. One of the biggest reasons why we didn't is that we have those mobility parking spaces on that side, and we didn't want to be funneling all our cyclists past mobility parking spaces on a footpath. And it also would have required sort of a detailing and a merge of the riders back onto the road around that crossing somewhere as well. So we're looking at how we can further enhance that merge, and just so that we can slow those vehicles down and make the merge safer for cyclists, which will be considered during
It's really quite nasty, and particularly if you're cycling and then you want to turn right into Victoria Square. It's really tricky. If you can either go out into the middle of the road, which is as skinny as heck, and you're stuck there with cars coming straight at you, or else you go onto the footpath and line up and cross there. I'm kind of not very happy with that solution. And would it not actually, even though it's not perfect to go on the footpath, you still thought that was not a better option?
I mean, it's possible that people could do that. There will be a cut down there that people can get onto the Avon River path. So some may choose to do that if they're less confident to stay on the road.
Okay, all right.
All right, so Yanni?
Yeah, I was just a little bit concerned. Thank you for the response to my question around emergency services like fire, ambulance and the police, but it didn't appear we'd received any feedback from them, and I'm just really concerned that, you know, we've previously heard sometimes of concern that they have with their vehicles. So have we had no feedback from them, and is there any process that we can go back to them to get feedback?
So they are on our key stakeholder list, so they get advised of all our projects. Generally what happens is if they do have an issue, they will come back to us, and we have quite a good working relationship through with all those agencies, and that if there is no issue, then we can kind of take it as read that they are happy. So that's the basis on which, I mean, obviously they are constrained with their resources and time, so they tend to respond to us where they have issues. If they don't have issues, they don't come back to us. That's the way it's going at the moment.
Okay, I just sort of thought with like the new fire station being built close by, that it would be good to have something in writing from them.
We can't force them.
Do we call them as well and say, hey, we've sent you this engagement, we haven't heard back?
Sorry, Yanni, you've just heard from staff that they have a relationship with them, and they have assured us that they receive feedback when they've got issues of concern to raise. So I'm happy to accept what staff have advised, and if they want to think about how that gets reported in the papers in the future, I think that would be a useful way of resolving that.
The other thing is, some of the submitters raised concern around, I guess it's kind of the design of cars turning maybe left or right and then being stuck with the traffic behind you. So I just wondered, this looks like a kind of similar design as like Selwyn Street and Brougham Street in the intersection. I'm just wondering if we've done any sort of, if we had any feedback from the construction safety audit, or whether we would get any feedback around the safety, because, you know, where we've got pinch points and people waiting in traffic, you can see quite an impact on, and especially a risk for a cyclist when there's a cyclist going ahead of someone turning left.
So I guess maybe a couple of things there, but in order to, in terms of holding traffic up, we can only have no impact on the through traffic if there's 3 separate vehicle lanes for the turning as well as the through traffic, which there isn't space for at this location without really taking the footpaths down to a bare minimum. In terms of safety, we're sort of aware of, I guess, concerns from submitters around turning vehicles, and we will be looking more at what we can do to just make that phasing safer at those intersections for cyclists and turning vehicles through detailed design.
So on Beeley Ave, does the cyclist get a straight ahead light, or?
That's one of the things that the hearings panel has asked staff to go and investigate. If we put additional time into for cyclists, what's the wider impact of that? And we need to understand that before we just put it at one intersection and make sure that we don't make a bigger impact, adverse impact on the wider network. But we have been asked to go away and investigate that.
And also with the Beeley Ave, we were looking at investigating the potential of putting a bit more protection in for cyclists, and actually maybe a rear turn light to stop cars turning over in front of it. So that's an area that we have concern about, and asked staff to do a little bit more investigation on it.
Right, is that all with questions? Aaron, sorry.
Sorry, I had one more.
You did have your hand up.
Yeah, it was just, why is the whole lot not sharrowed? It starts at Kilmore, doesn't it, and goes through there. Was that not a consideration? Because early on, when that was the original route chosen, that was one of the ideas nearly 10 years ago. But
so by sharrowed, you mean like a calmed, low-speed environment where the cyclist would share the lane with traffic?
Yeah, well, I think so. You've got the sharrow symbol on the plan. It's getting painted on the road.
So there are a few sharrows at the left turn lanes at intersections. Right. The markings that are in the lanes were a road art, which was a sort of a sharrow pattern, but it was really just a road art feature rather than a shared lane feature.
Oh, so it's not actually. So when you go over Kilmore and you're in Colombo going south, that
that shows at that point. So from Kilmore Street heading south would be a shared area where it merges into cyclists and vehicles sharing the space, which is what's there at the moment.
And given that that's 30k and so's the other way, why was the whole lot not given that consideration? Because if you want to drive somewhere quick and get on a real road and do 50, but if you want to share it, meander along with the cyclist, you come down here.
So to make the whole of Clumber Street, to be able to share in a shared lane, we need to get the vehicle speeds down low and the volumes down lower than what they are. And so to get those volumes down lower, there's going to be some quite heavy turn restrictions at some point.
Right.
Which is...
And it drops by Kilmore enough?
Yeah, it does, yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
All right, so that's all the questions. And Mike, you've moved it. Oh, and Councillor Chu seconded it. Right. Is there any debate? Aaron?
Yeah, I'll just thank the panel for doing the work they did and the staff. I actually really like this design. I think there's some real positives here, and unlike Pauline, who when she gets to Colombo, Kilmore, should have to go on the path for the people that go real slow and nervously. But I'd stay in the middle of the road, especially if I had an e-bike. I think I'd just stay in the middle of the road and do that 30k an hour that you can, and it's downhill there as well. But beyond that, I think the design's fantastic.
It's clarifying, we do have choice.
And to be specific, it's actually uphill when you get to the bridge.
Thank you. We're all not chatting amongst each other, but I'm going to now abuse my position as chair and acknowledge Richard Osborne and thank him for all of the work that he's done for us here at the council. And I think councillors actually want to acknowledge him for him. Thank you, Richard. You've been an amazing support for the council. You've always responded to issues that have been raised, and you know, this is the last paper that's going through, so I just thought I'd cheat and embarrass you. Has that been successful? Yeah. Excellent. Mike, did you want to speak further?
Oh, no, I think I don't need to speak to this actually. But no, it's actually something quite important. The first resolution I think is actually a little bit of an error, and it says to report back to the hearings panel, where it should say the Urban Development Committee.
I'm sure that nobody's going to mind if we quickly adjust the error. Yeah, it's just a...
1A and 1B.
Yeah.
It should be Urban Development and Transport Committee? Yeah.
Well, except that it was just delegated to the...
well, the hearings panel's no longer in existence, so...
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's cool.
It just means it has to come back to a full meeting now.
Oh, we can...
What about delegate to the chair?
Delegate it to a subcommittee. No, but it was the hearings panel to have continued life.
It can come.
No. Okay, all right.
We'll sort something out.
We'll sort it out. Yeah. All right. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you. Sorry? Oh, Yanni opposed. Right. Okay. So it's 12:56. We're obviously going to have to come back after lunch, which...
Are we? There's not that much more. Do you know when we keep going?
There's not much more to do, but I have to go. So shall I just hand over to... I'll hand over to Andrew to chair the balance of the meeting. Yep? Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thank you. Sorry, I'm giving a speech down the road. You can bring the briefing forward to 2 o'clock. Yeah, we don't need to go on that.
Is that at 2?
No, it was that LGNZ thing. We can't bring it forward because we've got something on at 2 o'clock. So 3 p.m. here. 3 p.m. Sorry?
We're going to do a Three Waters meeting.
No, Dawn and I have got something to do at 2 o'clock. Right. Okay, I've got to go. I'll leave it to you.
Right, so I'll finish the agenda and then we're back next week. That's fine.
You could be really good and get it all done and then just do the briefing.
Eh?
So you could get this lot done and then just do the briefing at the end of council.
Except that we
before
can't do the, we could do the briefing before 2.
No. How long?
Right. Okay, now we're...
More than enough.
Okay, so now moving to item 16, Plan Change 7, Managing Significant Indigenous Vegetation. Are there any comments from staff on this report as we move into it?
Thank you. So this report seeks public notification of Plan Change 7 to the District Plan. So Plan Change 7 is a targeted and responsive plan change that seeks to better protect and maintain areas of significant Indigenous vegetation while still providing for clearance where it's small scale and low impact, and in doing so it will better give effect to the Canterbury Regional Policy Statement and the New Zealand Coastal Policy Statement. And there are 4 key suites of amendments. So firstly, amendments to the definition of improved pasture to establish a clearer bottom line for determining whether an area of pasture is improved or not, and those amendments apply district-wide. Secondly, amendments to Appendix 9166, which is an appendix in the district plan that lists Indigenous vegetation present on Banks Peninsula and includes thresholds of size and scale which represent a point at which the Indigenous vegetation is likely to be significant. Those amendments also apply district-wide. The introduction of a rule framework which seeks to provide for the clearance of Indigenous vegetation within areas of improved pasture below the limits specified on Appendix 9166 and requiring consent above those limits, and that new rule framework applies only in the coastal environment. And also amendments to existing policies to clarify the circumstances when assessments of significance should be provided as part of an application for resource consent to undertake clearance, and to clarify how adverse effects in the coastal and non-coastal areas should be managed. And I'll just finish by saying that as the plan change includes rules that protect areas of significant Indigenous vegetation, they will have immediate legal effect on notification.
Thank you. So we'll move to questions, and I've got one just to kick off. So does this prevent the issue that we saw happen at Kaiteriti? And does it meet the aspirations of what Forest and Bird were wanting to achieve in their response to what happened there?
Yeah, so 2 parts to that question. I'll start by saying that if this rule framework that we're proposing was in place when what occurred at Kaiteriti happened, then it would have prevented what happened. Accompanying that, though, is Section 10 of the Resource Management Act, which is existing use rights. So existing use rights will still continue to prevail over this plan change. But if you took existing use rights out of the equation and put this rule framework in place in 2018, then yes, what happened at Kaiteriti split wouldn't have been able to occur. In terms of the feedback that Forest and Bird have given us, it's summarised in the Section 32 report, but they did want us to go further and farther than we're going in this plan change, but we did meet with them a couple of months ago to discuss their aspirations and what the plan change was seeking to achieve, and their position was that they would always seek council to go further than what we were proposing. But
yeah, and given that we're going out for consultation, we may well hear some of what we're discussing now in that consultation feedback.
Yeah.
Indeed. All right. Moving to questions. So, Mike, Yanni, Mike.
Thank you. Sorry, I was trying to find what I was going to ask, but I can't quite find it. I read somewhere that they're looking to actually gazette a policy statement very shortly, but there was concern if we didn't actually start doing this now, there may be some issues, and so therefore we'd just go ahead instead of waiting.
Yeah.
And then in here, obviously, it talks about 2 possible pathways to do the RMA, which is obviously the standard or the streamlined. Standard obviously takes a lot longer. Is there not any possibility, I guess, waiting for it to be gazetted, making sure everything's actually lined up with what we're trying to achieve, and then do the streamlined pathway and probably finishing it at the same time than you would have done if we'd just done standard now?
Yeah, the key reasons for proceeding with the plan change now is that there's a risk of court proceedings being reinitiated in terms of declaration proceedings, and there's very little overlap in terms of its proposed content and the National Policy Statement for Indigenous Biodiversity. So the key area where there's overlap is the definition of improved pasture, but I'm fairly confident that we would get submissions on it when it's publicly notified anyway, which means that if it is gazetted in July, then we can align the content then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yanni.
Thank you for this, and sorry, this question's just been driven off the LTP submissions that we just had recently, so I wasn't able to put this in earlier, but I'm just really interested in what this means for the Apawaho Heathcote River as a site of ecological significance. Is this going to have any improvement in the way that land use planning around that is looked at?
So that's, from memory from discussions we've had in the past, already a Schedule A site in the plan, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yep. So in the event that any clearance was proposed that would trigger a resource consent, then the changes to the policy framework would strengthen its protection, yes.
So does that, like, how far back is the setback from the river? Because rereading, like, the Kenaway Farm decision, where all the ecological advice was that we needed a 50-metre setback, and the Commissioner granted a 30-metre, but reading that advice, there were some really clear observations about things like sea level rise and coastal erosion and the impact on the ecology. So is there been any kind of consideration given to, like, sea level rise, climate change, coastal erosion, and what that means for some of these sites?
No, we haven't. Well, I haven't looked at it in the context of this plan change. This is very much just about clearance occurring, requiring consent.
And it's also worth noting, paragraph 3.1, that this refers to areas outside the identified sites of ecological significance. So this is not relating to the SESs, this is outside of the SESs.
That is correct, but given that we're making changes to policies as well, where resource consent would be required under the existing rules that we're not touching, then that policy framework would apply.
Yeah, so I guess the question is, if submitters felt, and we've had them in the LTP, if submitters to this process were concerned that we weren't doing enough to protect things like the Apawaho Heathcote, could they make submissions around the policy changes? And would that be considered in scope?
They can make submissions on the policies that we're proposing to amend, but the scope of the concerns you've described are potentially not within the scope of this plan change and would need to be considered at a future date. So if there's concern about the width of the site of ecological significance identified across the Apawaho River, then that would need to be considered as part of a future plan change on reviewing sites of ecological significance.
But sorry, just excuse my ignorance, how far does the site of ecological significance go in terms of geographic from the...
It's generally the river and its riparian margins, but it will vary according to the context. I'm unable to... It's not a fixed distance from the river per se.
But referring to the answers to the previous question, it's not relevant for what we're considering today because it's relating to the site of ecological significance, and this doesn't relate to the sites of ecological significance.
That's right.
Thank you. Changes the policies that apply to sites of ecological significance.
Yeah, it does. And sorry, I should clarify, those policies really only do relate to sites outside already identified ones. Yeah.
All right. Are there any further questions on the matter that's in front of us today? All right. So I'm happy to move the recommendation in front of us. Pauline will second. Is there any debate? All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. Now moving to item 17, the draft submission on the Ministry of Transport's discussion document enabling drone integration. So item 17. So we've got the draft submission in front of us. Any comments from staff on this?
No real comments. You've probably all read the draft submission attached to the report. So it's just a discussion document from the Ministry of Transport working with the Civil Aviation Authority. There will be further consultation in about a year or two's time once they've developed the amended rules, which we'll be making a submission on then too.
Yep. All right. So, Tim, you'll move. Sarah will second. Were there any questions on this, Aaron?
Just one quick one, and it is around with the number of drones and where they're flying and how high and stuff. With the work that's currently being done on flying electric vehicles, passenger ones, will that factor in, or will this just all get reviewed in 5 years? Or
that won't be impacted by these.
No, they're not a drone, but if a drone hits your flying car,
so there's two parts to the rules. There's part 101, which is what's being amended through this process, for those regulatory measures, and then there's part 102, which the Ministry and CAA believe are working okay at the moment, and so the bigger drones like that, or flying beyond visual line of sight, like if you're doing a delivery of something, they sit under part 102, so they're not impacted by these particular changes.
Thank you. No further questions. So this has been moved and seconded. Any debate? All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? As carried. Item 18, appointing a community representative to the Christchurch Primary Health Organisation Board.
Nominate Melanie.
So who moved? Sam's moving. Mike's seconding. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? As carried. Local Government New Zealand 2021 Conference. So this is item 19. We've got a reasonably clear resolution in front of us. Do I have a mover? James, and seconded by Tim. Any questions? Any debate? All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. So that now takes us to the end of the open agenda. We've already dealt with item 22, the public excluded minutes, with the 23 we dealt with as part of item 20.
Oh, right, okay.
So yeah, 23 we dealt with prior to item 20, because that was the matter it referred to. Minutes we've dealt with in open, so we don't need the resolution to exclude the public. So now all it requires me to do is to turn back to Mike to invite him to close the meeting.
Yeah, you see, you didn't need to.
I should have spoken more slowly.
So you didn't need to go to lunch. It's only taking 10 minutes.
I might do this one from the heart, Aaron. Kia whakairia te tapu, kia waitia ai te ara, kia turuki whakataha ai, kia turuki whakataka ai. Home, huie, tai.
Kia ora, thank you. So